take it in the order that's written on the agenda, and we'll turn it over to the Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Mr. Hendricks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to change around a little bit. We're going to start with police. Since Chief Osland is already up there, if that's okay with everybody? All right, I'll let you go, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, council members, Mr. Glazier, Mr. Hanlon. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge and thank all of our community groups, businesses, residents for their support throughout the year. I'd like to thank Mayor O'Connell and Managing Director McMahon for their enthusiastic support and trust in the Allentown Police Department. I would also like to recognize Assistant Chief Struss, Assistant Chief Angelo, Captains Kaiser, Roca, Hill, Granitz, and Lake for their countless hours of hard work and unquestionable commitment to the department and the city. Finally, to all the men and women of the Allentown Police Department, thank you for your commitment and daily sacrifice in order to keep the good people who live and work in our great city safe. The Allentown Police Department's #1 goal is to keep our citizens safe. In addition, we strive to provide the best service possible and be an active member of our community. The following slides, we will highlight some of the many accomplishments of 2018, our community outreach programs, and discuss the departmental objectives for 2019. In 2018, we deployed the RAPID program, which is a program for the pawn shops, which allows us to track stolen goods and resolve theft cases a lot quicker than if we had the old paper files. Naloxone continues to be a successful tool for the officers on the street. As of this date, Allentown police officers have deployed naloxone 129 times. We deployed only 119 doses in all of 2017. In the deployments in 2018, 93.7% of them were successful where the patient survived. The Blue Guardian program is a program where we follow up on the overdoses with trained specialists and community support. That's a directive from the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office, and we support that. That's been a very successful program in following up with overdoses and getting them the assistance and guidance and help that they need. Shop with a Cop, No Shave November, you might have noticed, has been very successful in 2018. In 2017, it raised nearly $3,000 for where we took more than 20 disadvantaged children shopping for Christmas. Each child was paired with an officer, and they shopped for Christmas gifts and then they were treated to lunch. In 2018, the current No Shave November, we've raised the same amount of money. We'll be doing the same this year on December 13th. Use of Force Decision-Making Simulator and the Emergency Vehicle Operations Simulator. We had a full year of deployment with those items. They've been very useful. We've been getting a lot of officers training on making decisions and during encounters with citizens and use of force situations. Also the driving simulator, which helps them be better drivers in emergency situations. Active shooter training. We have taken a very aggressive step in this area of training. We've certified many officers with response to incidents that could possibly occur at schools, businesses, large-scale events. We assisted Whitehall Police Department with an active shooter drill at Whitehall High School earlier this year. We continue to be very active and proactive in this area. NRAD and scales deployment. The NRAD is an electronic non-radar device which allows us to track speed for those areas where we have a lot of speeding issues. That was just deployed this fall. And the scales allow us to ensure that trucks and vehicles maintain and follow the weight restrictions so they don't damage our infrastructure. Project Lifesaver continues to be a success. We have 36 bracelets issued in the city of Allentown that program continues to grow, and we're excited about the growth of that program. In July of this year, we created the Financial Crimes Unit in our Criminal Investigations Division. This unit is tasked with following up on frauds, identity thefts, bank card thefts, transactions, fraud attempts. As of this date, the unit's been responsible for over 91 arrests, 8 criminal warrants, 23 criminal search warrants, 2 cases adopted by the Secret Service, 2 cases pending adoption by federal government, and 19 pending criminal arrest and search warrants. It's been a very successful program in just the 5 months it's been operating.
How many months?
premium pay budget is in line. Despite catastrophic car explosion, the Franklin Street fire, and other incidents throughout the year, we've been responsibly managing our premium pay budget, and we are in line with the budget amount. As you can see, we are 11.67% with 9.5% of the year remaining. Part 1 crimes continue to decrease. As you can see here, along with the clearance rates are staying steady or not increasing. To date, this is to date, Part 1 crimes are down. Now, we have another month to go, I'm knocking on wood here, but these trends are very good trends. So at the end of the year, they will certainly, I believe they will be relative to what you see here in front of you. Body cameras. In addition to being a valuable tool in criminal cases, the body cameras have been instrumental in ensuring transparency, and they've also reduced the number of citizen allegations of officer misconduct from 39 in 2016 to just 19 in 2018. We also received a grant for $150,000, which will allow us to upgrade and replace our current body cameras, and which will be able to integrate them into our car camera system and make them much easier to use and much easier to deploy. Our community outreach continues to be strong. We want to be responsive. That's flashing out of here, sorry. The department continues to be responsive to the community's needs through interaction and involvement with several groups and events. We have them pictured here. We have Cops and Kids where we read to children. Sweets and Treats at Halloween over at the Iron Pick Stadium, where special needs children trick or treat throughout the ballpark. The Humane Society, we've been working closely with the Humane Society, especially lately with their burden of taking on a lot of these extra animals there. From some of the cases, we're very proactive, and we've actually raised some money for them through our Spartan program fundraiser this year. The Youth and Law Enforcement Initiative, which takes police officers from the street, we put them in with youth of the school district, and then we reverse roles, and we allow them to interact and establish a relationship and kind of break down some barriers. This has been a very successful program. This year was conducted at Deer Ridge High School. We continue with our Community 365 engagement, where that encourages casual dialogue between police officers and the community members at large, especially the youth, where we hand out basketballs, t-shirts, etc., as a kind of a takeaway from that meeting to let them remember that we had a good experience with the police officer they talked to. Coffee with a Cop is continuing, where we sit down with members of the community, have a cup of coffee, and just talk and establish relationships. More of the community outreach programs, so throw some pictures up there. PAL bowling, PAL basketball, very successful. We also were very supportive of the special events of the city. Several of the major events in the city, we support them and supply the security and logistics for planning them. Yes, that is Julio up in the top right, if you didn't recognize his knees. Sorry, I couldn't enlarge that anymore, but there you go. The picture stretched a little bit. It had to stretch it. Our youth academy is strong. We had several children graduate this year. It's successfully run by Officer Stanker, who's in charge of the program, Matt Geek, and others from our youth division and school resource officers. Our Citizens Police Academy, very popular program as well. Sergeant Gress, as well as many other staff members and department members run this, where we bring the members of the community in, and they go through a simulated kind of police academy where they touch on all the areas of training, where the police officers will get training in their academy experiences. It ranges everything from defensive tactics to vehicle stops, and we give them some practical experience with that. Camp Blue Line, since I've been a kid here in the city, continues to be strong, and it's very successful, and we continue to support that as well through PAL, Officer Stanko, and other members of our youth division. So this year, our Join Our Team initiative for hiring was very successful. it was a 2-year process to ensure that we got the largest pool possible. We didn't get Fifi Ferris, that's just there, but we need to make our pool as large as possible to get as diverse a population as possible in our applicant pool. There were very strong recruiting years, Sergeant Gress, many of the others in the recruitment team, there are several of them, were very proactive and very active in getting the word out and getting interested parties to apply. We had over 600 applications with a very diverse demographic. If you compare that to departments anywhere in the state and across the country, many struggle with, outside the major departments, but many struggle with getting just simply 100 applications. So this was a great job. Our final eligibility list is 228. We are hoping, and it is our mission to hire 20 new officers in 2019. So our organizational objectives in 2019, obviously we just talked about rebuilding staffing levels. That's #1 priority. We want to see a continued decrease in violent crimes of 5%. A new initiative next year, and the officers on council, the retired officers, we've had kind of several variations of this. The 5th platoon, we'll be reinstalling the 5th platoon, which is another patrol platoon, which will focus in the areas of need at the times of the highest crime rates, etc. So that will be starting in January. We're going to continue our body camera integration with the new body cameras when we receive them. We're going to train the officers and get them integrated with the car cameras. We'll continue to follow our accreditation path. Our accreditation unit is very dedicated, and we're reviewing policies just about every day. One of our goals, it's a long-term goal, but we're going to start the program this year, is a formal career tracking program. I truly believe that succession planning is one of the most important things we need to do in the department going forward. We need to prepare the future leaders of the Allentown Police Department, so there are many candidates to fill positions when they become available. We're replacing our duty firearms. We'll be going from the SIGs to the Glock 19s. We were able to procure those at a very reasonable rate, which saved us a lot of money, which is almost cost neutral if you look at the total costs. Chronos scheduling software implementation, we will be starting at the coming year. That's going to help us reduce some overtime costs and man hours as far as trying to fill shifts and special assignments. We're in the process of developing a mobile field force unit. This unit would be responsible for responding to times of any kind of possible civil unrest where we need to keep the peace, and these people will be specially trained and dedicated to this mission. The proposed budget before you is lean and efficient. As submitted, it continues to provide the police services that our residents deserve in a fiscally responsible manner, consistent with the mayor's vision of financial balance. In fact, we trimmed an additional $443,000 from the budget since the start of this process this year. I want to thank you for your time and consideration, and we'll stand for any questions that you may have.
I suppose that's implied that I'm going to be asking all the questions.
I'll get the chair, remember?
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
How long do you want me to leave it up there?
You can take it down at your... And I want to thank all of your staff members for attending here tonight also, and for the great job they did. I'm going to allow my colleagues to answer questions or ask questions first before I begin. And so, how would we start at the left side? Mr. Robinson, would you like to go first?
I'm always happy to yield to the end because that makes my questioning period shorter, because there's usually a bunch of questions that everyone else has already asked.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Zuko?
Yes, just a couple questions. On page 67 of the small book, the detail book, down under account 07, the extra duty pay, and maybe even Sergeant Gress can answer this. There's a fee or I should say, an expenditure for $601,000 and $601,028. I know from the past the guys pay to work those, and then they also charge the retailer. What's that amount for? And also, the city pays insurance as a whole. So I know that they charge insurance as part of that fee, but
Correct.
what's that 600,000 for?
That is the amount budgeted to pay the officers. And then on the revenue side shows what we invoice all the different businesses, which includes the officer fee plus an administrative fee to cover the insurance. They also get charged if they require a vehicle, that's also an additional fee for a vehicle.
Okay, all right. So there, at some point, at some place, there's a revenue.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. Okay, page 72. At the top, count 46, I'm gonna put three things right together here. Number 1, number 2, and number 5, the canine stuff. I know that at the commendation ceremony, lots of citizens give donations toward the program. Are those contributions included here, or is this extra above that?
This is basically what we budget for, line item number 2, the maintenance training. That is an annual fee we pay for the dogs to go and train monthly. The pet insurance is what we pay for each pet, pay their premium, and then we actually, once they go to a vet visit, whether it's sick or a well visit, we submit the invoice to the insurance company and they actually reimburse us of whatever is allowed. It's mostly 80%, depending on what it's for.
Okay. I guess my question wasn't clear. Those donations that we get, does that offset some of this?
Yeah.
And is it
Yeah.
a revenue somewhere?
I believe so.
Okay. It is? Okay, all right. And then, line number 8, the site test, that's $18,000. Roughly how many does that include?
9, because on average, they're about $2,000 a piece.
Okay, all right. And down under 40, other services and charges, there's, I think for grant interest reimbursement, and then grant advertising. Can you explain what those are for, $900?
The grant interest reimbursement is just for if we would happen to pay any interest on any funds we receive for a grant. Sometimes they will charge us an interest fee if we don't expend it in a certain amount of time, if we have the money ahead of time. Most of our grants now, majority of them, are we purchase the item and then we submit for the reimbursement for the grant. That's just like an in case if they actually come back and say, okay, you owe us this much interest for the money we've given you.
Okay, all right, and then,
The advertising is if we have to advertise, we're gonna get a grant and it, like, we have to advertise it for, in the morning call that we're going to be applying for this grant.
okay, all right. And then, the background checks for $3,800 or $3,600. I know the officers normally do those, so who does that money go to?
That cost has been reduced to $2,400.
Okay,
We actually have, that is for any type of background check, whether it's for hiring or, investigative purposes. It's an actual, we pay for as many as we need to. It's a flat rate of $200 a month, and we can do any type of background. I think it goes above and beyond what we can do. I think it goes statewide? National.
okay, all right. And then down on page 73, under uniforms, number 1, $37,400. That's for how many officers?
20,
That's for the 20 you're projecting to hire?
yes.
Okay, all right. And number 8, name tags, $2,000. It seems like a lot for name tags.
The average name tag is $18 a piece.
Okay,
It's for new hires, replacements, promotions. It's on an as-needed basis. Sometimes we don't spend that much, but at one point, that was the most that we've spent, so we kind of use that as our max.
okay. And then the last one, 23 there, the 12.5 for ballistic helmets. Is that for the program that the chief was talking about starting, the mobile response unit?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, page 74, item number 17, Dan's camera, $39,522.70. Are we buying on cameras, or that seems like a lot for a camera?
That's actually the price for ammunition.
Okay, 18.
18 is
Okay, I'm sorry,
$200.
then. Yep, my mistake. 75, page 75. Under equipment, 72. Number 6, tasers. Yeah, $35,000. Now, is that, it says a 5-year payment plan.
Correct.
Is that 7,000 a year or 35,000 per year?
Actually, the price was reduced to 28,080.
Okay,
It's actually, we basically received the taser in advance, we're paying them off in the course of 5 years.
That's what I meant,
And it's a
okay.
constant payment each year,
and then the same thing with 11 for the taser.
same exact thing.
Okay, very good. Page 83, equipment again, the body camera replacement, that's already covered by the grant, correct?
Correct, that money is gonna be used for our match for the grant.
Okay, and then 84, under other contract services, 46, you have $7,000 for comm center camera access control maintenance. What's that for, since they're all moving to the county anyway? Number 2?
That's the,
Mhm.
that's also a 46 here. So the cameras, it's for the Genetec that's the Genetec software license agreement for the cameras that we have in the physical comm center. Halfway through the year, yes, the dispatchers moved, but we're still gonna have the cameras there, we're still gonna have the equipment there, and the software's gonna need to be there at least for this year.
Okay, all right. And I had one more question. On slide 4. No, hold on just a second. Page 3, I'm sorry, I have the slides, the bottom cameras. At some, I don't know exactly where I have it, but there's, I think it's $35,000 for this year's budget. How? Okay, and then you have the grant here for 150, so
Correct.
we need, it's 178 total?
No, we have to match the 150, so that along with the other things we have used.
We used money from this year,
Okay,
Yeah.
and then the other 28,000 that we budgeted in 2019 will help make up the rest of the $150,000 match.
that's what I thought, okay, okay, that's all I have, thanks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Zuko. Anybody else going on that side on the left? Ms. Noda?
Good question.
You're right there.
On page 77,
Small one.
on the small book, where it says education pay. Education pay. 2,000. And then in the bottom it says 15,000. Can you explain that?
That's for premium pay.
This is for the police academy, so that's premium pay you're reading there is 15,000. The 2,000 is for the contractual education stipend or whatever for college degrees and higher education to pay for that.
Okay. And on page 80, number 6, the frames, 4,500.
No, the number 6 should be 1,000.
Number 7.
Number 7 is the crimes code handbooks that are 4,500.
It is 1,000?
Yeah, the frames are 1,000. That's for all the accommodation frames, etc.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Young. Mr. Zuko, you have
Yes, I'm
the
sorry, I had one more I forgot. Under the equipment fund. On page 207, under account 72. Yeah, you're asking for 20. Yes, I'm sorry, the detail looks smaller. you're asking for $222,600 for vehicles. Roughly how many vehicles is that?
8.
18?
Eight.
Oh, eight, I'm sorry. And,
Skip the beat there for a second.
how old is the prisoner transport van? Because you got one last year, I believe.
There's three,
There's three.
and we stagger them, replace them, it's guess will be every 3 years, unless there's a problem mechanically.
Okay, have you had a lot of problems mechanically that we could maybe get by a year with another year? That one?
Yeah. Once they're out of service as a prisoner transport van, they're redeployed to other areas and used until at least 100,000 miles. So, but the prisoner transport vans need to be, they can't be up that high, and we're gonna break down with the prisoner in the back.
Okay, all right, okay, thank
I have
you.
another question. For professional development, are you guys planning to, I remember that last year, you guys were thinking about, learning, Spanish, or taking some Spanish classes. Are you guys planning to do that?
Part of my long-term objectives for the department, the long-term plan is to definitely do Spanish training, language training. I would prefer to be in the Spanish immersion type training where it's intense and not the textbook stuff. And it's the Spanish that's spoken here in the city, but it's very expensive. So until we can increase that line item, we're gonna have to kind of see what we can do otherwise. But yes, it's part of the increases that we request.
What other kind of, training are you guys planning to, that you guys have in mind?
Well, there's obviously leadership training, supervisory training is important. Frontline supervisor training is we focus on those things. Also tactical training, shooting schools, de-escalation training is a big one. We do a lot of that, and obviously any other type of training that's offered that we can mostly host these schools. We have the great gem of a police academy that we can host the schools, but those are we focus on the supervision and some of the tactical schools, but obviously, it depends year to year, different schools are offered. So, and there's also a lot of investigative schools that we'd like to start adding to our repertoire for the criminal investigations division.
Are you able to collaborate, with, different colleges in the area?
Well, typically the police training doesn't come through the colleges, but we work with Muhlenberg College, we've worked with Cedar Crest College and DeSales, they've been partners of ours. A lot of the schools that we're getting are independent or associated with FBI, the FBI LEADA courses. Penn State offers a lot of the leadership schools as well, and so we work with them and we get comp slots by putting people in. With so many people, we get comp slots, but we do still have to pay for some.
Okay, thank you. Why I'm asking is, you did mention this escalation training, maybe stress training,
Yes.
and things like that. That's why I asked. Thank you.
That's all. Thank you, Ms. Moda. Anybody else on my left?
No, I'm actually having flashbacks looking at this.
Yeah, I just wanted
Ms. Affle?
I just have one question, actually. I see this in training, professional development, in the big book, 120. There's like a $20,000 jump in this. Can you explain that?
Yeah, right now, the budget amount for this year was $55,000, we're asking for $80,000, and that's part of what Councilperson Moto was speaking of, is enhancing some of that training. Again, I repeat myself, but supervisory training, leadership training, and criminal investigative training, as well as other types of, we want to continue to get schools and we can get comp slots, but we want to make sure that we can also get the higher cost schools in here as well, and because it's good training, and there's more training the better. Because when it comes down to liability and issues that come with the interactions with the citizens, the first thing that's asked is how much training do you have, or what training do you have to do this, or how are you an expert in this field if you don't have, you need the training. So that's our goal, is to train our officers as much as we possibly can.
Upgrading all that training.
Correct.
And in the long run, it won't cost us
Well, exactly, the investment, the return on investment will be immense, yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Affleck. Mr. Greedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. It was a great presentation, especially that picture with that oversized guy over there.
It was stretched.
But I do want to say, you know, in your presentation, all the work that you do in the community is really appreciated. I think all of us, I know I can speak on behalf of the Dias and most people in the community, the work that you're doing is really noticeable, working with the youth and with the community and walking around, talking to people. And I've seen some officers that have done that and going over to stores, especially in the summertime, and talking to some of the merchants. I think is what most people are looking for.
Yes.
See the police officers out on the street, correcting the heat, as opposed to just driving through.
Absolutely.
And I think it's very commendable. I know that you have faced several situations where it could turn out to be worse, and you officers made the best of it.
They are the best, I believe that, thank you.
And it's very noticeable as well. And, you know, in the environment that we are, with all the things going around the country, with police officers and residents, I think we really commend our officers that have been able to retain themselves from doing things that otherwise in other communities, it could have turned out worse as well.
I think that speaks to the quality of the officers and the training and the restraint, so, but thank you very much, sir.
And I also, you know, want to commend you for the work that you did during the bonds, accident incident. It was really something that we never experienced in our city, and all the forces and all the safety and the police, the fire, and the EMS and all the other people that came together worked out a great, I would say, system where, for lack of a better term, was a system that actually made it very manageable and understanding, and it was very well handled.
Yeah.
So, just want to say that that doesn't refrain me from asking all the questions about finances. But I just wanted to make sure that you know that we are looking at it, and people are really commenting your efforts and your work throughout the community.
Thank you, sir, we appreciate that.
I just have a couple of questions, very simple questions. I have some amendments that I'm going to be making some other time, but just today I have some questions. Mr. Zuko asked a lot of the questions that I had, which is really good. And we're going to work together to make sure things turn out okay. In regards to uniforms, I saw a couple of uniforms. That's all right.
What page?
I'm actually on page 73, the small book, the detail book. I think I saw two, and now I'm looking for the other one. I think I saw two uniforms, line items here, and trying to figure out which one is the. I know there's one on 73, 74, and I think I saw another, oh, there you go, 73, line number 9, but also line 37, and is that just, so they do you do one for new officers and then one just for church replacements? Is that what that is?
Yes.
And do you have one for fence replacements as well?
Line 13.
Line 13? Okay, it is, okay. Why do you do it separately like that? Why don't you just put uniforms?
Yeah, exactly, they're two different vendors.
Oh, okay. How about shoes?
The officers buy their own. Uniform aspect.
All right, thank you. On page, that was asked already, so. Yeah, now, it's moving along. They asked, a lot of those questions were asked. I just looked at The other question that I had in regards to uniform pension, non-uniform, okay, that's for, who are those? Who are the non-uniform, just the people who work in the offices? Is that what you, is that what the pension? I'm on page 77, so. Okay. You know, there's another pension in there. The other question that I had is, on page 82, and that is the camera surveillance. And my understanding is that the fire department is looking into hiring some people to do camera, take care of the cameras and surveil, do surveillance and things like that. Is that, and you have $125,000 from that? How is that? Do we have two departments? Are you proposing two different departments for the repairs and surveillance and another department, two or three people that are supposed to be coming in the fire budget?
No, I'm not familiar with the fire part of that. This is strictly for the 180 some cameras we have throughout the city that, the street cameras, so this is just the maintenance and servicing of those.
Yeah, but aren't they supposed to be doing the same thing?
Mr. Greedy, I think I can help sort of clear this up. What you're talking about is in the public works budget. It's a transfer of telecommunications, not fire. And it's addition of 2 technicians and a bucket truck to deal with daily maintenance of the cameras. What we're looking at here, and this was actually a question that I had,
And I have to.
yeah, is X number of months of that contract, because the contract is actually about $360,000 a year. So this 125, just my rough math, I'm guessing, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but this would be about 4 months?
Correct.
Okay. So this is for 4 months. My assumption would be while we advertise the job, hire, train, get the equipment, order the bucket truck, and go through that. So for 4 months, we would still need the vendor to do that while we're going through the process of hiring, training, and equipment.
Okay, thank
That
you.
would be through CSI, is that correct?
Yes.
That we're currently paying, which contract will end in March, is that correct? April. Okay.
Thank you,
Same
Mr.
question.
Robinson.
Yep.
Good explanation. You have the same question, yeah, it's kind of popped out there. The other question I had in regards to happen to be cameras as well, but it's page 83, and it's in regards to the body worn cameras. I thought you said you got a grant for that, right?
Yes.
And these 28,000 that you have here, is that part of that grant, or is that something different?
That's part of our obligation to the match. The grant is 150, we have to match the 150.
Okay. But there's only 28,000 here.
Correct, because we have money from this current budget that we're using towards it.
I think there's other questions that I have right now. Next to this. Let me just go back. Back in 2016, I think it was, we put a bond, and part of that bond, which was, I think, $6,000. We did it with $6,000, and also with $20,000. And part of that, I remember that they were talking, I'm sorry, and I remember that part of that bond was supposed to be, that some of the money was supposed to be used to buy some of these body camera. Correct. So did you ever get that money, or did you not get that money because you have it here now again? From the bond that was we borrowed. Do you remember that? What?
That was for the server for the body cameras.
Or
We actually had a grant for our body cameras that we purchased the original, I'm not the body.
The actual camera.
Yeah, the actual cameras.
Then you have the storage, the server, all the service agreements, everything else.
But there were also monies that came from the short-term loan that you're talking about, the
Right.
$6 million loan, 15, 16, and 17, that were used to supplement that, yes.
So that, some of that money was used for that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. I think those are the questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. And,
Thank you, sir.
I may come back later, but not late.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Ms. Saffa had another question.
I have one question. I'm up or? Okay.
Final Jeopardy. Final Jeopardy time.
When you talk about upping your goal to 20 police officers, wasn't there something, you talked about it last year, and I have to refresh myself and hope you refresh my memory. We get some kind of grant or something if you hit a certain amount of officers,
Correct.
and then we get, how?
Yes. So once we hit 222,
222.
yes, 221, and then 222 through 228 is paid for a community policing grant, but we have to get to that number first. Once we get to that number, we can just draw down on that. We are
We are currently at 211.
we're at 211 right now. We'll be at
We'll be at
we'll
208.
get 209 as of 2 weeks from now, some retirement's coming.
And we have to this year, 18 or 19, how long does it last?
How long is that?
For the grant?
Yeah.
Well,
Just got that
actually,
last year.
we have the 217 grant, we haven't even started to draw any funds
That's the
after
one she's
that.
talking about. That's good for
3 years?
3 years. Yeah, it's good till it's 3.
3 years, yes, for 3 years.
There you go. So we have till 2020.
2020. Okay, thank
We
you.
do usually have
Sign up. now.
extensions we can apply for.
So that we have that, so that, and that's what your goal is, you're thinking maybe possibly 2020 to have.
But yeah, 228 is our goal.
Okay, thank you.
How many people do we have in the waiting list?
We have 228 applicants on the new background list, on the applicant list. So we're gonna start doing all the background checks. We actually already started. It's a constant process. So we have a fresh new list now. It was just certified this month.
Ms. Miller, you had another question, or is that? Okay, thank you. All right, I'll go next, and then I'll leave Courtney for last, is that okay? That works for me. All right. My questions, to begin with, are in the large book. Starting with page 116, line 50. Other services and charges. Big jump from 850 to 15,000. What does that include?
We actually had moved some items from, working with the controller's office and with finance. We had moved several different things from our 46 account to our 50 account, just so it's
Okay.
come to align it with the,
Comply with Mr. Blazer.
yes.
Okay, all right. That explains that. And then line 68 of the same page,
Yes.
operating materials. Is that likewise the reason for that?
Yes.
Or was it also a large jump? More so?
Yes, we had moved several computer-based software from one to the 68 account, which is where it lines with the controller's office.
Okay. Line 120, skip that one, it'll be, page 123, there was a jump of an officer there to the academy, and I believe I have the answer to that. As I spoke to you today, that was a new officer who began,
Mid-year.
assigned to the academy mid-year
Correct.
last year.
So now,
And only this year in the book is he showing up under the academy.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, that was confusing to me. And that also would have accounted for the large increase in the total budget for the academy. There was a jump of 195,000.
the extra
Page
salary.
124. Large book also.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll include for all of the
Pension.
benefits,
Health benefits,
pension,
Benefit and pension and all.
longevity,
For that.
allowance, all that is included in that number.
Okay. If we could go to the budget detail book. On page 75. line 32. Canine trader cards. What is that?
They're actually little
Baseball
cards
cards.
that, like, little baseball cards that when our officers go to elementary schools and middle schools and community events, and they put the dog, they actually have like the canine picture on the front, a little information about the officer and the canine on the back.
It's a doggy baseball card.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And the kid give them to the kids and they sign them and when they, because they do a lot of demos at the schools and that's what the kids love those.
All right. And then, on page 78, this may be the academy again, probably is. Line 4. The jump in the insurance there. From 116,000 to 150,000. Is that again for the additional officer? The 30,000, which is, or 25,000, yeah, which includes retirees and all. Now, another question I had, not from the books, but you mentioned about we're trying to replace the officers. How many officers do you expect to retire? Do you know from this year to next?
Right now, this year, we know of 2. And I don't think there's gonna be any more.
3.
3? Oh, we have 3, I'm sorry.
It just jumped already.
It just jumped. Latest news, just in on the wire. 3.
Okay. And I do want to compliment you also. I think it's important to note here, like you mentioned, many other departments right now are experiencing a lot of problems in hiring, with a lot of the negativity toward police. Whereas I see you had 600 people come out, and I think that accounts a lot why they're coming out, because they do respect our officers. And for good reason, because they put themselves out there in the public, be good light, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I have no other questions. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, Chief, I just want to compliment you and your department. Very well prepared budget. I didn't have a lot of questions to begin with, and between my colleagues, they were whittled down to a precious few. And just a couple questions on your presentation. So when we look in the budget book, the detailed book on page 70, and we're looking at account 34, training and professional development. So we did have the increase, which you discussed a little with Councilman Offa, but could you tell me what are the new, when we break it into the line items, what's the new training that we're looking at?
Well,
Or increase in training, I should say.
it's actually just more training.
Right.
Like when we have Jassy come in, that's the Penn State school that comes in and does the leadership training. There's several different schools they offer. In high impact supervision, frontline supervisor, executive training, there's several different schools to get. We just want to continue using and expanding, putting more people in. So here's my reasoning is we should be training our future supervisors before they're promoted. So people that are on the sergeant's list, the lieutenant's list, they should be getting that training ahead of time. So that's a wider pool of officers that are going to need training. So we need to obviously have some more classes.
Excellent. And I'm glad to see that such a large part of the budget is devoted to the executive and supervisor training. Because I think that's one thing, and we've talked about this before, especially with Ms. Desumi, that mid-level training for our bureau managers and things throughout all departments has really been left. So I think seeing that large of a number there is an important thing, and I thank you for that. On page 73, in uniform account, the bulletproof vest replacements, line 10, the 54,000, roughly how many vests will that be?
60.
60? Great.
Those also are rotated.
Absolutely. Yep. That's what I was just trying to get sort of a handle
And that also
on.
includes the potential of 20 new hires.
Okay.
That's also included in that.
And do those include the canine vests or just the officer vests?
Thank you also.
Okay. I figured they were separate, but I just wanted to double check what we were on it. And we already touched on that. So in the budget book, that was really, in the detail book, that was my only question. In the main budget book on page 119, so we have the breakdown for the operations budget for the department chief. Could you sort of give us a quick rundown, more for my education and anyone in the public who hasn't had the benefit of being here before, on the assistant chiefs and the captains and what their roles are, just so we have an idea of the amount of work that they've put in and what their responsibilities are.
Wow, I could be here for a while.
Reader's Digest version.
Okay, well, the assistant chiefs are broken up into two responsibilities at the moment, operations and support administration. So operations, the assistant chief is in charge of patrol, criminal investigations, and the training division. The administrative side, support side is in charge of budget, as well as internal affairs, cameras, technology, background checks, hiring, goes on and on. So they're broken that way. The captains, obviously, as you know, we're broken into PSA's 4 service areas. They're responsible for everything that happens in each one of those service areas. We have a captain in charge of criminal investigations that manages the entire criminal, youth division, SROs, vice, etc. And then we have a captain that's in charge of the administrative part. That's the assistant to that assistant chief. Just the technology alone and the internal affairs division is quite the full-time job. So that captain oversees all of those tasks and responsibilities, and anything else that the assistant chief of support services needs to do.
So in that sense, whereas on the operations side, you have theoretically 5 captains who would assist that assistant chief, Pangelo.
Correct.
On the administration side, you have 1 captain to assist with those functions. Is that a correct breakdown of that?
That is.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. I had most of that knowledge, but I wanted to double check myself, and I appreciate that. On your presentation that you gave us, so looking at, let's touch on the body cameras a little bit, because I know that seems to be something we had some questions on, and I want to just make sure that I have this correct. The reason that you're looking to do a replacement on the body cameras, which we received the grant funding for, is to make it compatible with the existing car cameras, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then this will provide that we have a single system to put all the footage together and then provide that to the RIC and the DA's office and anyone else who would need that.
In one convenient location, yes.
Okay, and what type of sort of time savings are you expecting that'll provide from what you're currently dealing with?
Assistant Chief Struss can certainly answer that one. It's going to be, I can't even calculate that at this point.
So you're expecting it to have a major impact on?
Major
Okay.
impact as far as deciphering through 2 different systems and trying to pair them up and get them all burned on a CD and everything. It'll be one location. It'll be incredible.
And since we already have the existing software to deal with the car cameras, I assume then we don't need anything else other than the hardware.
Need the cameras, that's it.
Fantastic, great, thank you. On page,
Look at page 5 and that.
Page
picture in the
8.
morning. Oh, no.
so. No, we already touched on that enough,
Okay.
so, and I have to say, Councilman Greedy, you do have good legs. So, when we're looking at the organizational objectives, so with the 5th platoon, since we have the PSA districts currently,
Yes.
how are you looking how that will fit into the existing PSA districts? Because you said it's going to be covering different problem areas, so it obviously could be throughout every district. How's that going to break down?
Well, the commander of that platoon will report directly to the assistant chief of operations.
Okay.
And they will meet regularly to decide where that platoon will be deployed. And they'll be obviously in close consultation with those PSA captains and deciding, kind of figuring out where they're going to be deployed for those time periods. So it really kind of, they're basically a supplement to the patrol platoons. So if the patrol platoons are extremely busy, there's a lot of things going on, they can assist, but their primary goal is to be proactive in the problem areas.
Okay, and how many officers will be out on the street during that platoon's shift?
That's tough to say. I
Okay.
couldn't tell you that at this point, but
Okay.
we're working on that.
All right. Talking about the formal career tracking program, I liked what you were discussing with that. Could you maybe give me just sort of a little bit more on what you're looking to make that program into?
So when an officer is hired, they receive 914 hours of training in our academy. They then receive 16 weeks of field training with a field training officer on the street. And then once they clear that, they're given keys and they're a police officer. From that point, we want to catch them there and guide them kind of steer them to where they want to be. So if that officer, and they may not know right away, but we want to keep track of them, why we call it Care Track, is continue to monitor and communicate with them about what do they want, where do they see themselves in 5 years, 10 years, looking big picture, looking down the road. If that officer wants to be a detective and she wants to go to the detective bureau, then we need to guide her as far as getting the proper training in those years, those formative years, before she becomes eligible to become a detective. So that's the model we're looking to do for all of officers. And then obviously the more senior officers, you know, things can change, and making sure that we're responsive to what their career challenges may be or their desires may be. And when you have a content and satisfied officer, you're gonna get a lot more production.
Excellent, thank you. And then the chrono scheduling software system. I have a little bit of experience with this system. I seem to have, you know, my experiences with it were positive. I'm curious what parts of this, because I know there's different modules for the chrono system, what
Right.
we're looking at using.
We're just gonna be looking at the scheduling software,
Okay.
and what that's gonna help us with if we have a sudden need for officers on the street, or there's a detail that comes up. It's all electronic. Right now, we have to have a poor sergeant on the desk calling everybody down the seniority list and all the rules that we're going through. It takes a lot of time and energy, and this will free up a lot of manpower for that, so it'll be all automatic.
Excellent. Those are all the questions that I had for you, Chief. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And Mr. Greedy has a couple follow-up questions now.
Thank you. I thought that somebody else was gonna get that, but, just two quick questions there on the detail book, page 71. They just would like clarification, line number 6, leave miscellaneous claims, $20,000. What would you constitute miscellaneous claims? What would that-
First of all, it's been reduced to 15,000, and
So now we got, let me see, 6 something from the other one, 12 before, and 5 more, that's 21. 18, okay. But what is it, by the way?
That's for any damage done to our vehicles that's under $500, that's not covered by the garage contract, or through risk, rather. So any damage to one of our patrol cars, the damage amount is under $500, comes out of that account
So you
that we
have,
have to pay for.
so you have,
So somebody, we have blows a tire on a curb,
okay.
and we have to replace the tire and rim, that comes out of that money.
And you saying that the current contract we have doesn't cover any of it? Or there's
No,
a
I'm sorry,
$500
it's more,
risk?
risk takes over, I think, over $500, am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So that would be 15,000 instead, okay.
yes.
I'm adding it up, 5,000 more, so. Okay, now, the last question, the other question is, it needs for my own verification, I'm not sure what it means, line 29, fire alarm queue maintenance, what is that?
File on queue is our evidence management software that when an officer takes a piece of evidence and logs it in, it's software that catalogs it and organizes it and then archives the information and where it is. And with any software, any program you have maintenance agreements that they have to do the upgrades and make sure it's working properly, and that's just part of the contract for that.
Can we ever use it, or is it
We
something to use it all the
use it
time?
all the time, every day. It's,
All right, just, I didn't know what it was.
Yep.
Thank you. I think that's pretty much it. There's something in my little, new presentation here that I wanted to also compliment, but I think it was something to do with the children that you took out to, shop.
Yes.
That sounds like a good program. Where did you get the money from? You said you spent about $3,000.
so, that's, in order to look furry like this, much to the council president's chagrin, I'm sure. I know he's a stickler for tradition, but each officer donates $20 to Not Shave for the month.
Oh, so it's $20 donation.
And then the $20 is added up, that's all from the members of the department. And then we also had some donations from community members that were excited and supported it.
Oh, great. Wonderful. You can be, you can be sorry next year.
You take it, chief.
Thank you very much.
Another year of budget hearings, you will be wiped out.
All right, any other questions from my colleagues? If not, I'll allow Mr. Glazer at this time, if you have anything.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight is all public safety, and I'd certainly like to thank Chief O'Sullivan and Chief Weir and Mr. Gratz and Daniil, of course, for answering our questions. There was some spirited back and forth, but, you know, I certainly have confidence in the budgets that these departments prepared. I would say that if you really wanted to raise some money for No Shave November, I think you should give the spouses an opportunity to up the ante to ensure that their husbands shave. You know, it's just a thought. A quick question regarding the federal grant for additional officers. In addition to salaries and benefits, will that grant, if we hit that number, cover outfitting the officers as well? Okay.
That's strictly salary and benefits.
You know, I sent the chief about 6 pages of questions covering both the operations and the academy. And just some of the highlights, I pretty much asked him, you know, looking at the history of expenditures over 2017 and 2018 year-to-date, sharpen his pencil, go back and look at some of the things that we budgeted and see if we could do a little better. And I think that that he did a pretty good job. You know, as in all departments, I've asked them to reevaluate what their print expenditures for the city-owned copiers will be, and also electrical usage. Mr. Messinger, through Public Works, negotiated on the electrical portion of our bills a reduction of 25%, or maybe 20%, and that electrical represents about 75% of the bill, depending on the location and the invoice. And hopefully that reevaluation is going on, and maybe the administration will have some good news for us there, but that affects all the departments. The chief said that they could reduce their printing budget on city-owned copiers by about $7,000. When we looked at the 32 account, which are the memberships that the police department joins, and we've come up with some savings there of a little bit over $1,000, some things we may not need to use anymore. There's some equipment, vehicle calibrations, you said we're not gonna need to do anymore, so we'll get to save a little bit less than $900 there. We've been budgeting for impound lot security. We don't seem to use that anymore, so that can be removed. Fleet claims, as the chief mentioned, we've been budgeting around $20,000 a year there. I think the driving simulator has improved all the driving, and our experience there has really been pretty good over the past couple of years. So the chief felt comfortable reducing that by about $5,000. We moved some expenses into a more proper account. One of the things we've done this year is take a look at the chart of accounts, so that a like expense in each department ends up in the same account, and so some changes were made there. And lastly, on TASER expenses, we're in the waning years of the first TASER lease. I think this is year 4, and then next year will be 2020 will be year 5. Am I correct on that? We were able to reduce that from $35,000 to a little bit over $28,000. And the second TASER line item is really year two, payment for year 2 of 5. And we've seen some savings there. We can, Chief was able to sharpen the pencil and save us about another $4,500 there. You know, I asked a lot of questions on the academy, and all my questions were answered to my satisfaction. I do have a concern in terms of ammunition. Our usage has gone up significantly between 2017, 2018, and then 2019. At least this year, ammunition prices on the items that I can match up are the same. We don't know what prices are gonna be next year. And I just think that's something that the administration and management and the department should keep an eye on in the out years. So in that regard, I really have no questions for the chief, but just kind of recap some of the progress we made over the last 2 days in reviewing the budget.
And it would be safe to say that those savings are not currently reflected in the budget book as it's printed, is that correct?
That is correct. My expectation is that they would come out in a budget amendment on Monday.
My goal is to have, Mike on Friday.
Okay, and then that, of course, depends on whether council, you know, adopts.
Other amendments,
Yeah.
understandable. And I realize these aren't any, we're not looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars here, but certainly it all helps.
Well, I think what it shows is not just in the police department, but in the other public safety departments and the other departments as well, is how closely the budget hews to real expected expenses. You know, I certainly found some savings in other departments, but, you know, it's really at the margin. You know, and we know that most of our costs from personnel and benefits. So the sundries, which is really what we're looking at, you know, might be $15 million, $17 million of our whole budget. But, you know, just so we understand that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Glazer. Okay, we have no other questions for the chief. I'll let him sit back, and at this time, we'll go immediately into the fire department for their presentation. And what I'll do is I'll hold off until all the bureaus have had their opportunity before we open up to the public.
It would make sense.
He's the chair of this one, but I believe he's been at that time.
I don't believe
We'll
this
give
is
more time for questions after.
It's been an hour and 15 minutes for one department, so,
Yes.
so if I'm budgeting an hour and 15 minutes for what, 2 more departments? We'll be here 2.5 more hours before we get to questions.
They're smaller departments, so there shouldn't be anywhere near
Are the
that.
budgets smaller? Line
They are.
items?
They are.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I tried.
Okay, chief. Oh.
Chief Alslavin. Excuse me, Chief Alslavin, before you leave, before you walk out to the hall, Ms. Alpha wants cards from the canines.
Okay.
Baseball card.
Sign.
You have any favorites?
Okay, we'll begin the fire presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Glazier, Mr. Hanlon. Thanks for having us here. I guess I'll start this out with just saying, I want to thank the mayor, Mr. McMahon, Mr. Hartzell, the rest of the finance for helping us through all this process and getting all this done. I would also like to thank my staff, the Deputy Chief Freddie Augusto, and our office manager, Angela, for the hard work that they did through going through all this and all the hard work they do throughout the whole year. I'd also like to thank the firefighters of the downtown fire department for all the work that they have been doing for a long time, especially this year with all the special events that took place. I'll just say that. So I want to thank them. So our budget, I'm just going to review what took place over 2018 and what our goals are for 2019. All right, so far this year, our fire responses, for the end of October, we are at 8,316. From our estimate, that kind of seems to be on par for what we have done other years, so we'll probably end about 11,000, a little over 11,000 calls for the year. With these fire responses so far this year, we've had 54 structure fires as of the end of October, with obviously large dollar amount losses. Our cooking fires, I can happily say, are down from last year to 49. There's another slide in here that I'll hit later on, but I will just touch on this. I just would like to say that I believe that this is due to our fire prevention office and the work that they're doing in the community and getting the word out about careless cooking and the efforts with that. I believe I said the last time when we were talking about the budget that our new deputy chief, when he was in fire prevention, did a lot of work with translating a lot of our material into Spanish so that we could get the word out more into the community about the cooking with greases and stuff like that, and what you have to do and what you shouldn't do and stuff like that. So that I feel contributed to our cooking fires going down this year. This just kind of touched on what our losses are for this year. We're just over $1 million for losses in the buildings, and our vehicle losses are about $34,000. For the department, for our training academy that we've had, well, this entails all the special teams that we have and the academy itself with the personnel that we have go through the academy. And our CEUs, our con eds that we have to keep. We have to do so many con eds every 3 years to keep our EMT certifications up. So this year we've had 5,865 hours of training for the hazmat and bomb team, detect, rescue, dive. Like I said, our EMS con eds, our fire academy. And we started a new class that's teaching about fire dynamics, strategies, and tactics. I'll just touch on this really quick. The strategies are always, in years past, to go in, ventilate, open up every window, and attack the fire right away. And especially to ventilate, it has since come out with a lot of trial and error from the departments the bigger departments that actually do the investigating on this, that those tactics are no longer tactics that we should be using. We should not be ventilating before we start hitting the fire. It actually, when you ventilate right away, it actually helps spread the fire quicker. So that's what we're going through right now, kind of retraining everybody on what to do with our strategies and tactics when we're fighting the fire. This year, in our fire prevention, every year we try to do a smoke detector program, which is partnered with the Red Cross. It is to go out into the community and install smoke detectors in homes that need them. This year we installed over 300 detectors. We were in the east side of the city and in the 6th Ward. And again, I just put there, that was the other part that I touched on earlier about the translating of the fire prevention documents into Spanish. We already have set up, I don't have this in the slide because this actually just happened 2 days ago. For our goals, we actually have set up for April 27th, I think it is now, for another smoke detector program. We're still trying to work out where we're gonna have it and what part of the city, so, but we are planning another one. The public relations and education, we do that Ride to School program every year. This is the 13th year for that program. In the program, we reward 2 students per school for their role model and leadership, which are picked out by the teachers and the principals of the school. The program has reached over 5,500 students in both public and the charter schools, so we do it for all the schools in the city. And they have a really good time. We go and pick them up, we take them for a ride, we set up a time where we're gonna drop them off, and the students from the classes come out, they're all standing there cheering their fellow students on. So it's actually a really good program. We do a lot of community services in that we go out and we do a lot of static displays for churches, community events, certain organizations within the city have us come out Halloween parades. There's certain areas in the city that do their own little Halloween parades that they ask us to come out, and we just go out and we teach about the exits, drills in the home that they should be doing, about checking their smoke detectors every year, and that they should have CO detectors, and obviously the big one, the stop, drop, and roll. We've had over 13,000 adults and children attend and come up and talk to our firefighters at these events, and we hand out coloring books, and they enjoy it. It's another really good program that we have going on. We also do another program for extinguisher training and child care classes. So child care classes, we have had 906 providers in attendance. In 17, we had 624, so that's actually going up. We have career days within the city to entice residents to take the fire department entrance exam. And then, like I said, the fire extinguisher simulator, where that our Captain Christopher, he performs that, and he does it for residents, city employees, and whoever asks to have that class, and we do that class for them. We also have fire and life safety education classes. Obviously, anybody can ask for a tour of the fire stations. The fire stations are always open to come have an organization, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whoever, come to tour through the fire stations. We're working with our partners at the Health Bureau and with APD, and we do events such as what is called CERT, and we help out the APD Youth Academy, and we go there and show them what we do. We've increased that this year by 20% over last year. For our fleet, we took delivery of a Pierce Arrow XT back in August. We will actually take delivery of, it actually should be 3 more trucks. We have 2, it does say that, okay, so we'll take delivery of 2 Pierce engine rescue trucks in December and 1 engine in January. However, this kind of got pushed back a little bit, talking to the salesman recently. It looks like we're gonna get all 3 of them within the first week of January. Just how they were on the line, when they'll be completed, it just made more sense. And it's actually gonna save us a little bit of money that we're gonna get back to actually do it all together in the first week of January. Right now, we're working on our new hazmat truck from that grant that the state gave us. We have already picked out a company that is gonna build a truck. We were in a budget crunch for that, so we were limited on how much we could spend, and we only had 1 company that was able to meet that budget, which was $420,000. And unfortunately, this is probably the only downside to this year, is that we had our arson canine judge retire this year. So he's enjoying retirement. So our goals and priorities for next year, for the fleet, I am trying to get our truck 1 put back in service. As you may or may not know, we only have 1 aerial in service for the size of this city. I would like to try to figure out a way to put the other one back in service. I'm also looking at possibly trying to figure out how to add new firefighters, which I believe that if we could do that, would reduce our overtime costs. It would also allow us to put the truck back in service. And with the way the city is growing, we need to start looking at growing this department also. I'm looking at upgrading our old thermal imaging cameras. The technology in most of the cameras that we have are outdated. So we keep looking at trying to replace them with the newer technology and upgrade our more sensitive chemical and biological detection meters, which is part of it was already done through that grant money that we got from the state. We were able to get a new hazmat ID analyzer, and I believe that just arrived. Correct? Yeah, so that meter just arrived. Some more of our goals, we're working on trying to get more funding for our specialty teams. They're in need of equipment, so we're trying to work on ways to figure out how to get more updated equipment for our hazmat dive, tech rescue, and our bomb team. Our fire academy, we had our classrooms taken away from us quite a few years ago. We would like to try to figure out a way to get our academy back to where it was. There's a wooden structure out near our tower that we have that is falling apart. So we're trying to get that refurbished, and I will say that, I'll just throw a pitch in here for Home Depot because they have graciously given us some lumber to help with that project. We're trying to replace our air filling station over at Max South. I am working on a AFG grant for that, and hopefully I just submitted all that paperwork, so hopefully we'll find out, I think it's the middle of next year if we are awarded that grant. We're always going to continue our efforts to educate the public about safe cooking practices and continue to work with our public safety partners to get the community more prepared for all types of hazards, especially with the unexpected car bomb and the warehouse fire. And that's pretty much all I have for the presentation. So thank you very much, and I'm open up to any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, I'll start on my right. Mr. Greedy is ready.
Yes, thank you. I don't have too many questions, but I will. See what I might put here. Let me just start on the large book, the real budget book. And I'm looking at page 142.
142,
Oh, sorry, that's not.
Yeah, that's the EMS.
That's the EMS.
Yeah. Fire to be the next, start at the next page now, 144.
Yeah, yeah. Page 148.
48. Okay.
And that was looking at the premium time on this one. Why do you think you needed to raise this so much on this?
The premium, is that what you said, the premium budget? Okay,
Yeah,
so,
premium pay.
so 3 reasons why that went up. One is because I had to add the overtime, or not the increase in the salaries for next year, which is 3%. The other increase is if you, in the small book, you'll see that I put in there for our specialty teams. Currently, our specialty teams, with the way that our premium pay budget has been cut, our specialty teams are down to only being allowed to train either 2 ways, either 4 hours a month or 8 hours every other month. So I budgeted in there to get our specialty teams back up to 8 hours a month, which is what the training that they should be doing. The other major increase that was in there is when the fire administration did their budget last year for this year, after it was presented to council and unbeknownst to the fire administration at the time, there was $100,000 that was taken out of that premium pay that was never forwarded on to the fire administration. Now, currently, we continuously go way over our premium overtime pay with the way that we have to staff our platoons when they're working. So doing the budget this year, I was asked a question about whether we needed that back in there, and we obviously need that back in there so that we can be financially, fiscally sound with our premium pay and be able to be right on level with what is in that budgeted line item. So that was also added in there, and that's the reason why that was increased so much, for those 3 reasons.
Thank you, excellent. Just more quick questions, just for clarification. One is the training development, same page,
Training and professional development.
934, training and professional development. Sorry.
So, yeah, so the increase in that is, as you all know, the emergency management is starting to be a big thing federally, and it's starting to be a big thing in the city. To be able to have a credited, I guess is what I can say, emergency management system, you need to have an emergency management coordinator, and you need to have at least 2 deputies. I am one of those deputies, but I am still working on my certification. So that was increased for me to be able to continue on with that certification.
Okay. And the next 42, count 42, line 42?
The repairs and maintenance?
Yeah, other contractors.
Yeah, that-
Repairs and maintenance, repairs and
Yeah,
maintenance.
that was increased due to what, basically what the police department said, and to be in line with what Mr. Glazer would have liked to have accounts. There was accounts that were in other accounts that were moved over into that account. That's why that increased.
So those amounts were formerly.
They were formerly in other
accounts.
accounts, so if you kind of do it account to account, there are other accounts that actually dropped. 46 went down, so there was other accounts that went down, just so that we took those items that were in those accounts and moved them into that account, which is the reason why that account went up.
Thank you, because I had the same
Yeah.
note about that. Thank you.
I don't have any further questions for you, just to say again, like I said to Chief Ausleben, great job with the fires, and I know that, you've been busy this year. There have been
Yes.
pretty many fires, and big fires,
Yes.
and you always came to the top and control them, and being very, very safe, so thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you, sir, I appreciate that.
Job well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reedy. And now going to my left, Ms. Zaffa?
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
I just have a couple of questions. These structures that were not house fires, but there were 54 structure fires.
Yes.
How many of them were vacant properties?
I actually don't have that off the top of my head, but I'm saying quite a few. I can find that out easy in our reports, but I don't know that number off the top of my head. I do know that there was a few of them, yes.
Yeah.
But I don't know the exact, I don't know the exact.
Yeah, legislation we're looking at, to make sure these are correct.
Yeah.
The situation we have before. So if you can get that to me. that'd be great.
Yeah, sure, I think that would be an easy thing to get. I'll make sure I get that for you.
You know, there's other goals for police officers, and I'm looking at the fire department, and I have something that was given to me, and it's kind of upsetting that we have the population of 121,000, then we go to 98, 75 Bethlehem, Reading, Scranton, and then we go to Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is close to our population.
Yes.
And it just amazes me that we have 122 firefighters. And Elizabeth, New Jersey has 236. And it's the same population that we have. And we're looking at Bethlehem has 113, we have 135 for Reading. And it's kind of disturbing that we have only 122. And I would love to see us pushing a budget for you guys to get a lot more.
Well, as you well know, I would love to see that also. I can tell you that, in 2011, we were at 146. So from 2011 to current, we dropped from 146 to 122.
And the call volume.
And the
Elizabeth,
call
New
volume keeps
Jersey,
going up.
15,000, Allentown, 10,000. We're the second after Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Correct.
And we just don't have the manpower that Elizabeth, New Jersey, that's why I'm picking them, because this was,
And that's the reason why I thank our guys, because our guys do a fantastic job with the amount of calls that we get and everything else with the minimum manning that we have.
well, speaking for myself, when it comes to the budget, public safety has to be number one in my book. Public works, public safety, and these are the reasons. This is something that, when we look at the budget and we put money in things, take money out, whatever we do, to me, the priority is to make sure that the citizens of Allentown are covered. We have a great fire department, we have a great police department, great EMT, but you also need help. So I just want you to know that we're aware of it, and
Thank
the administration, and would certainly like to do a lot to help you fill these positions. Also with the emergency coordinator,
you. Yes.
we need it, and I'm glad that we're going to. I think some of my colleagues are also.
Yes, and I understand some concerns with that about, it's kind of new territory for Allentown, but it's not new everywhere else. This is something that the federal government has made stipulations on a lot of things in there, and they're really ramping this up with hazard mitigation and everything else, that this really needs to be, and especially in a city this size, Pittsburgh, Philly, that it really needs to be its own department, so to speak, or at least have its own figurehead. Because it's not just, years ago, it used to be a part-time, basically a part-time job, and it could be done while you were doing another job, but anymore, it's a full-time job. It really is, with all the stuff that the federal government mandates on a lot of the businesses in Allentown, like the assisted living homes and everything else, and all the exercises that they're mandated to do. It's just a full-time job anymore. It really is.
I agree, it's a different world, and we don't want to lose any funding, if something happens with FEMA, and Vicky was saying she could lose a $300,000 grant. So this is really important, because what happened with the bomb and the fire, to have that coordinator, I understand we got compliment from the FBI and everything about how great the city was coordinated with that, and we have to give.
So since you brought that up, I'd like to add that, one of the reasons Mr. Gertie, you asked about the premium pay, and about one of the reasons why it went up is because I wanted our specialty teams to get back to 8 hours a month, because they need it for their training. When that car explosion happened, the FBI and the ATF, they all came in, and I had several of those agents come up to me complimenting me on how our bomb team was conducting the investigation and what they were doing. To the point where several of the higher ups in those offices said, just so you know, when we come in here, we really take over. However, your team is doing such a good job that we're not taking over. We're allowing them to continue on since they started what they were doing. We're gonna allow them to continue on, and we're just gonna kind of shadow them and help them out. And this is done with a team that trains 4 hours a month. So
It's a job that's necessary, and not only for, it could be Public Works that can help me out with it. Suppose we have a terrible storm and the city's crippled, and if you have a managing coordinator for all of these things.
Correct,
so,
yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank
for your
you.
service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alpha. Ms. Moda?
Ms. Alpha, I share the same sentiment. I really believe that it's much needed. I also would like to commend your department because, in the summer, I went to the east side and I was part of the operation that you guys had with the Red Cross putting.
Yeah, with the smoke detector.
Yeah, you guys did an excellent job. So, I was one of the person, that went knocking on people's doors and I got
Does that mean
into.
you're gonna volunteer again in April?
Yes. I will, believe it or not, I had a lot of fun. And, so, and it was great training, you know.
The record that was set with, the over 300, so we're looking to try to get over 300.
And believe it or not, I was just in shock that a lot of people didn't have an alarm, you know, so, a smoke alarm. So you guys did a wonderful
Doing
job.
this program is really an eye opener for, I've been at all of them but one, and it's unbelievable.
So count on me on April, I'll be there. I just want to share
I will
that.
absolutely pass on the date when it's set and let
Thank
you know.
you. Thank you, you guys do a great
Thank you.
job.
All right, is that it, Ms. Moda?
Yeah, that was it.
Thank you. Mr. Zuko?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple quick questions. Page 90 of the detail book, small book. Yeah. Under number 1 would be permanent wages, I'm assuming. It says which percent increase due to CBA. What is CBA? Is it the?
That's the party,
That's
that's
what I
the
was
contract.
okay. And then also, under premium A, under account 06, it appears that you're gonna get the 2 additional firefighters that were put in the budget last year.
Well,
And let me go further with that. If you go to the big books, page 147. Under 01F firefighters,
yes.
it's 84 currently, which would jump to 86.
No, no, that's actually not totally correct.
Okay.
So, in the budget, since, and I don't know exactly when, I'd have to really look that up. There was 3 positions, 2 were funded for $1.
Right.
One was fully funded,
Okay.
but we were never authorized to hire for that. So the 84 that you see is the actual number.
Okay.
It's just that we only had 81
I got you.
currently employed.
Okay, so then, if you look at the actual and estimated from 18 and 19, last year was budgeted for $5,319,492. And if you're gonna include those 2, they budgeted, apparently they budgeted for $5,661,267.
Yes.
Now, if you divide the 5,319 by the 84, comes out to roughly $126,654 per firefighter, based on that math.
Okay.
So if you add those 2 together, it's $341,775. Now, there's a difference between what's budgeted this year and last year of $215,000.
You're talking about from the 18 to 19?
19, yeah.
So you're talking about below here for the 8 million? Like, I'm not exactly sure which one, wait.
These 2 also, those firefighters, subtracted from that, it's, you know, I'm sorry.
You have to repeat the question. I'm not really sure I'm following
I'm
what
just
you're asking.
kind of curious, if it only costs $126,000, 654, for 2 of those firefighters, they budgeted $341,000.
Okay, that I would have to refer to.
Yes, that's fine. Or am I not seeing something? It just seems like.
Oh,
it's
so
a-
you're taking, are you going from the 8 million?
No, no.
The very bottom?
No, I'm going strictly from the firefighter one.
Do you have that counted in there when you figure out your calculations? Do you have a 3% increase for their raises?
No, even at 3% wouldn't.
Okay, yeah, I have to,
Thank you, Mr. Zibble. Very good question. I believe that a big chunk of that increase is gonna be that there were two positions that were $1 that we're now funding fully, so that's gonna be about 150,000 or roughly for that amount. And then, yes, I expect that the rest of that would be 3% plus step increases
Okay.
for the remaining year.
Okay, very good. And then just one more question, Chief, under the equipment fund. You have, oh, the little book, I'm sorry. You have budgeted line 11 under equipment 72. You're budgeting for a new F-350 cab with a cloud gate for 50,000, am I correct?
What page you on?
I'm sorry, 207 of the small book.
Page 207. That's not us.
There's their rentals.
Number 11. Yeah, under the equipment.
Or the F-350.
Yeah.
The F-350.
Oh, you're looking at the equipment?
Yes,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, 50,000. Is that already a set price, or is that gonna have to be?
No, I think
set out for
I think
bid?
that's just the estimate price, that was a set price that I was given.
Okay.
But I believe that could fluctuate depending on what the current price of the vehicle being bought is for that year.
Okay. All right, and obviously, we're trying to cut back.
Yes, yes, so that,
Is that in this-
there's potential that could be absolutely lower.
Okay, all right,
$10,000.
all right. Okay, thanks, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Robinson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, again, thank you to you and your staff for a very well-prepared budget. Again, some of my questions have already been dealt with by my colleagues, and I will try to be brief with these, so we get to the public comment. On page 147 of the large budget book, so I guess we're now going to say large and small, so I'll go along with that. So when we're looking at the positions for the management of the fire department, can you give us sort of a rundown as to what we're looking at with the deputy chiefs, the assistant chiefs, the administrative assistant, the office manager position, so we can sort of get a sense as to what a rough idea of those responsibilities are?
The deputy chief is the second in command of the fire department. He's in charge of the overall operations of the fire department. He takes care of the vehicle fleet, personnel, the vacations, just about everything that has to do with the fire department. The assistant chief, so we have two assistant chiefs. One is in charge of all of our training that takes place within our department. And the other one is in charge of our fire prevention office. And he works closely with the building standards, inspecting the new buildings that are going up, inspecting people that are putting in kitchens to make sure that they're all up to fire code and all that. He's also in charge of our fire marshals. And that is, except for one captain, we have also one captain, which is our public information officer, who is also kind of in the administrative order. And that's pretty much our administration.
Okay, and then the office manager and the administrative assistant.
The office manager is sitting right next to me. She is pretty much the brains of the department, and for lack of a better way of saying, pretty much runs the department. The administration assistant is the person, she's up at the fire prevention and helps our assistant chief of fire prevention up there with all the paperwork and all that has to be done up there.
Right, so basically when we're looking at, because I know there is, as some of my colleagues have stated, there's always a desire to look for efficiencies. And it was mentioned at one of our previous hearings that there's an expectation of doing more with less. So just trying to get a sense that when it comes to management and leadership, the fire department does not seem to be top.
We are definitely not top heavy. I can tell you that at one time, we had 2 deputy chiefs. And I don't know exactly when that, I don't have a date, I'm sure I can get it, but I don't know when that was taken away. But I do believe that was under Chief Bobby Shire, I believe, but that position was eliminated. So at one point, we did have 2 deputy chiefs, and if I remember correctly, the way that was broken up was one was in charge of like the operations, and the other was in charge of fleet. So now we have one who's in charge of everything,
And also with just having, since the administrative assistant works in fire prevention, in your office for administration, you really only have yourself and the deputy chief and Angela as your office manager.
That's correct.
So I just want to compliment you on the fact that you certainly meet that mandate. This department meets that mandate of doing more with less. So,
Thank you.
in the detail book, so if we would look at, so looking at page 92, with the training and professional development account, this was sort of addressed, but what are the either the new programs or the increased programs? Is it just solely what you were discussing before about to continue you getting your accreditation for being an assistant emergency management coordinator, or is there any other increase there?
No, there's some other increases with some other classes that we're training that we're trying to bring in. One was that fire dynamics training that we're starting, fire dynamics and strategies and tactics. There's another one that I actually just started today, this morning, professional developments for our officers. That we're trying to get that training brought into, and that's something I would like to see started next year for all of our newly promoted officers.
Great. In the 42 account, if this is not something you can easily provide tonight, if maybe you could just get us an email on this. I'm just curious what, per the new practices that are being instituted in budgeting, what was moved into the 42 account? Is that something that you would have available or something that you could maybe provide us if you don't have it available?
I don't think I have, I mean, I can guess at some of them. I think
Okay.
number 2 was moved into it. I-4 was moved into it. I believe 6 was moved into it.
Okay.
7 was moved into it.
Okay.
But I don't have,
No, and that's just sort of a rough idea,
Yeah,
just that.
There's at least 5 or 6 items, maybe even 7, that were moved from other accounts into that account.
And so when we look at that, the vast majority, if not all of the increase, is simply from changing the
Yeah,
budgeting practices.
Yeah.
On page 94, in the 56 account for uniforms, when we're looking at the increase that we see there, is that increase mainly due to the replacement of the turnout gear?
No, the increase is mainly due to the fact that now with NFPA standards, we're required to have our gear inspected, cleaned,
Okay.
and repaired once a year. And all of our members have 2 sets of gear, so obviously we have to do them at different times during the year. So we do one in the beginning of the year, we send out 1 set of everybody, and then closer to the end of the year, we send out the other set.
Okay. What's the lifespan on turnout gear, barring if it has any tragic action?
Again, according to NFPA standards, you have to replace a set of turnout gear after 10 years. They have to be taken out of service at 10 years.
Okay. On page 95, with the equipment funds, account 72, what items in the detail gave us the increase there?
6, 7, and 8.
Okay.
Oh, I'm
So-
sorry, and 10, yes, I'm
Yep.
sorry, yeah, 10. I'm
So
sorry.
basically what we're looking at here is what we were talking about in trying to improve the equipment that the special teams have.
Correct.
Okay. And for myself, having participated when, a few months ago, when the administration along with the union did a day for us to experience what the special teams go through in training, with some of that equipment that I specifically helped utilize during hazmat training, there's definite need for some new equipment there. So I think this is a great thing, because the last thing we want to see is either one of our employees or, God forbid, a member of the public get injured because we have old equipment that we're utilizing.
So I would just like to add that the other team, I was a member and actually was the team leader for our dive team, and some of our dive equipment that we're using still dates back to when the police department had the dive team.
Well, and as someone who, not often, but as a scuba diver myself, I know just how much goes into dive equipment. So having equipment that's old can potentially be dangerous.
Absolutely.
And just one last thing, and I apologize, I did not bring this up, I didn't have my note written down here. So on page 90, with the premium pay, we've sort of touched on this a little bit with detail number 3 with the special teams training. But I sort of want to just get a sense as to, so we're looking at, this will provide 8 hours of training for each team.
Correct.
Okay. And currently, we're doing the 4 hours, right?
Correct. Or they have the option
To do the
to
alternating.
do the alternating ones at 8 hours. And one of the reasons for that is because like the dive team, to
Right.
set up all your stuff and all that, you just can't do that in 4 hours, so.
So, and this might be a better question for Assistant Chief Chris Gravich, but if you feel comfortable answering that, what type of, I'm trying to sort of think of the right way to word this, the 4 hours of training, how inadequate would you rate that in comparison to being able to do the full 8 hours of training in terms of potential safety for the employees, potential safety for anyone they'd have to rescue?
And that's a great question, I don't mind answering that one at all.
Okay.
Well, I'll use the bomb team as an example. The bomb team is federally mandated to do 16 hours a month. They get, before it was reduced, they would do their 8 hours, and then on duty, they would try to get the other 8 hours in just so they can meet that mandate. Now you take it back to 4 hours, and you've cut the amount of time that you can go out into the training field, so to speak. You're now rushing to have to get your training in.
Right.
Our tech rescue team actually just went through a 56-hour training course that was needed for them to be certified, and I don't know a whole lot about the tech rescue end of it, but something that had to do with the rope parts of it, so that they could set up all systems and be able to go down sides of buildings to be able to pick, like I'll use window washers as an example, to be able to pick them off of their apparatus to get them down to safety. They had to go through that 56-hour course and be tested out after that with just 4 hours a month.
So I can imagine that
So-
took quite a long time to get that
It took,
accomplished.
well, to kind of boost their ego a little bit, they actually did that in 2 months with just the 4 hours of training that they had per month. They busted their butts, they did extra stuff, and they were able to accomplish it. So not having the required 8 hours, there's so much more training that each team could accomplish, certifications that they can meet by upping that to 8 hours.
Well, while we're on this, it sort of goes to, that was the last question I had in the detail book, but while we're on this, it goes to sort of a question I had in regards to the special teams from your presentation, which is, for everyone's sort of education, could you maybe talk a little bit about the responsibilities of each of those teams? Especially, I think there's something that, and this is sort of the one fact that sticks out in my mind that I think is important, is the level of activity that the dive team goes through and the areas where they are first responder callers that are outside of the city of Allentown.
So each team is specialized in their area of expertise, and they go through extra training to be able to meet the mandates that are required to be on this team. The hazmat team, they're all hazmat certified at certain levels. They are the ones that go into any hazardous material site. When we go to a hazardous materials call, the incident commander will set up a zone, and the only people that are allowed to enter that zone due to the hazards that are in there are hazmat technicians. And there's different levels of training that they have to go through, because there's different levels of suits that, depending on what that hazmat material is, depends on what level suit they have to go into. All the way from wearing just a mask, all the way up to a Class A suit, which is a fully encapsulated garment that I would not want to wear.
And from personal experience during that training day, I can say those are not easy to work in.
Yeah,
So-
so our tech rescue team is responsible for anything that is, say, high up off of a building, off of a cliff, or in confined spaces, such as if a building collapses, they have, and there's somebody inside, they have to be able to go in and get trained. And that was part of that training that they just did, was to be able to, as I said, be able to, if a window washer has an accident and they need to be removed from those, that area, they can go up and they can get those and pull up and get them out of there.
And it's also trench work as well, correct?
It is trench work, yeah.
Which we have a lot of work going on with UDI replacing pipes, so that's potentially an issue we have.
So they're trained in being able to set up supports to be able to go into that trench and dig the person out.
Okay.
The bomb team, obviously, we just saw what happened. They're trained to be able to defuse bombs if found, if they find something that looks like a suspicious package. They're trained to be able to go downrange and be able to deal with that package and basically render it safe in certain ways. And they have to go through a lot of training. They have to get recertified, I believe, I believe it's every 3 years in Alabama. They're federally mandated to get recertified. So they have training that they have to go through to be a bomb tech. The dive team, since I was in charge of that, I know a little bit more about that. The dive team is one of the only specialty teams that when they do their training, they are continuously put in a hazardous atmosphere because they have to go under the water to be able to do their training. So they have to be trained in how to use the breathing apparatus that they have to use to go under the water. We just, well, not just, a couple years ago, we took a fantastic course on public safety diving and how to be able to go in and search. I mean, the people that taught us the class taught us to be able to go in black water, which is water that if you put your hand right here, you can't see, and find a dime on the surface. You know, so it's all that training. It's specialized training that is needed to be able to go to an incident and to be able to find a body, car, whatever it is, a weapon in black water. The dive team, well, I will say the bomb team is responsible for an 8-county area. They respond in 8 different counties. The hazmat team responds to a lot of different areas also, especially all over Lehigh County. Tech rescue team, when called, they'll respond all over, especially in Lehigh County. And the dive team was just asked to be the lead team for Dutch Springs if there's an accident there, for Leaser Lake, for Beltsville, and there's one other one, and I can't think of what that one was. But, so they respond all over also.
Yeah, and that's, the one thing I think was interesting with the dive team was, and I don't remember if I'm gonna get this right, but there was a day a few months ago when they responded to a potential issue of a bomb found underwater in Whitehall, and the same day had to help with the police department in pulling a submerged vehicle out of the Lehigh River in one day.
Yeah, that was a few weeks ago.
So, and also I just think it's important to note with hazmat, there were 2 fires this year at the Franklin Street warehouse, and the first fire back in May, I remember there was a potential hazmat issue, and we were lucky because on the actual engines, we had enough members of the hazmat team that they were able to identify it and get the work started. Whereas if we'd be relying on another agency other than our own to provide that, we could run into some serious issues of not getting those problems addressed quickly.
Absolutely, that's correct. So any of the teams, if we have to go outside, it's gonna take probably an hour or so for teams to mobilize and get to where they're needed.
Absolutely. The last question I have for you is concerning the information that Councilwoman Offa was talking about that we were provided with. We look at the fact that Bethlehem has 2 aerial trucks, Reading has 3 aerial trucks, Erie is the only other city that I think, if I'm correct, in Pennsylvania that has 1, and we have 1. And obviously, we're looking at, even from just 8 years ago, a far different skyline than what we had before, where we had really only 1 major building of any height, which was PP&L. You walk down Hamilton Street now, and we have several buildings that are over 8 or 9 stories. And that trend does not seem to be stopping. Same we're going to see with the waterfront as well, looking at least 6 or 7-story buildings.
Correct.
How dangerous of a situation do you feel that we are in by only having 1 aerial truck available?
Well, I'll say that comparing us to York, even though York has one, is kind of apples to oranges because they're smaller than we are. A city this size should absolutely have 3 aerials. So the danger that we face, and I'll just use the Franklin Street fire, I can't say for sure if that fire would have been put out if we had 2 aerials in service, but I can tell you that we wouldn't have had to call 3 3 mutual aid trucks to come in to assist us with that, we may have only had to call one in, if we have the other aerial in service. If that aerial is on a call, right now, the way it stands, if that aerial is on a false alarm call and can't leave there, and then a working house fire comes in with rescue, and it's needed on, just say, these high rises, we have no aerial that can respond. We're either gonna have to call a mutual aid aerial in, or we do have an agreement with Bethlehem that they'll send an aerial too, but there you're talking about a delay in getting that aerial to that scene. So by the time that aerial gets there, the use that we need it for is pretty much probably gone by that point in time.
Do we have stats on the difference between our response times, especially with our aerial trucks, and mutual aid response time projected? That, you know, of that, what we might be looking at in
Not that I
difference?
know.
Okay.
I'm sure it can be.
If that's something maybe as we look forward, because I know this is, you know, a lot of what we're discussing throughout this whole budget process is also going to be things that lay groundwork for many years to come in budgets. So if over the course of the next year, it'd be possible to maybe do a study and figure that out, I think it'd be helpful for this body moving forward when we look at long-term planning for fleet evaluations in the fire department. So.
Yeah, I'm sure we can work on that.
I appreciate it, Chief, and I just feel the need to say, I walked down, because the Franklin Street Fire is only 2 blocks from my house, and my girlfriend and I both walked down that day. And the job that you and your men did was exceptional, and I just want to say thank you for that and everything else. And I can only speak for myself on this, but when you talked about what you were told by the ATF and the FBI, I don't think I've ever heard of the federal government coming in and saying, yeah, we're good, we're not gonna take over this investigation. So I would just like to congratulate you on that.
You can understand my surprise when I was approached by 2 of their senior guys who commented on that at different times, I'll say, that I was unaware of that, and so our bomb team did a fantastic job there. They did
Oh,
really good.
that's fantastic. I appreciate it, Chief. Thank you for this and all your hard work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. And I'm saying this just tongue in cheek. I would hope it was, and I fully agree that you guys need to be complimented. I hope the Secret Service and FBI just didn't want to say the overtime.
I can honestly say with as many people as they had there, I'm sure they put out a ton of
Everybody got
overtime.
enough anyhow, right? Absolutely.
And I may say, you know, as the person who actually say you can do, we need to do more with less, your department is an example of that. And, you know, I remember when you had 144, 146 fire, and now you have 120.
122.
122, yes. And I think you are a better department and better firefighters than people from Elizabeth, New Jersey. So that's the reason. But I'm not looking to, I'm looking for cutting on fundings, not on men. So I'm looking for making sure that we keep our cities financially solvent. And I do feel that you did a wonderful job throughout the year. We all, you know, have just one ladder truck.
Thank you. And I understand you're trying to cut, but I'm trying to build our department and keep our department growing with the size of the city, and that's what I'm trying to do, and trying to get the word out there.
I know you are. And you know, the other thing I wanted to say, sorry for the timing, is that you do a great job with some of the other municipalities in sharing services and working with each
Yes,
other.
yes,
And that's
yes.
admirable. Not every municipality or not every region, like we are in the Lehigh Valley, does what we do.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Greedy. Mr. McLean, you had a question?
Absolutely, I have one question, but I just want to make one comment too, not taking anything away from the great job you guys did. But I heard the federal government say many times, you guys handle it.
Yes, I'm sure you did, yes.
But not in a situation
But
like that.
not in that
Right, but
situation.
anyhow, my quick question is, and I don't remember who it was, but in the last couple of years, didn't you guys sit down, and I could throw this to Jeremy too, but I don't want to put him on the spot, as the union president. Wasn't there some sort of an agreement worked out with the administration about replacing of vehicles? And did that happen a year or two ago? maybe 3 at best, because I know the equipment.
So that could be the trucks that we're getting now, is that?
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about in need of another aerial truck.
No, I'm not talking about the need of a new one. We currently have 2, but one is basically permanently out of service. In other words, it's not staffed.
Okay, so that's the reason it's out of service.
That's the reason it's out of service. Not out of service because there's mechanical issues with both of our rails, but that's a whole nother subject.
That would be the replacement issue that I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about getting it staffed. It's currently not staffed. I'd like to get it restaffed to be
Okay.
in service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Then I heard wrong. I thought there was an issue.
No,
with
it's
the
not.
equipment itself, and I thought.
It's not with the
Is that
equipment.
part of, is that in that plan for replacement?
There actually is a plan for that. There is in the 5-year plan. I believe it's 2020. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look, but I believe that there is a plan to replace one of the aerials in
Okay,
the
then that
next
could be
couple
part
years.
of that plan that I was.
Yeah, and there's a plan for that in the next couple of years, but what I'm asking or trying to get is to actually get that truck restaffed so that we have the personnel on duty and have the 2 aerials on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. I just have 1 or 2 questions. I'll be brief. On the large budget book, page 148, you may have answered this already. Line 72, the equipment fund. There was a jump in that of about $304,000. Does that include some of what Mr. Robinson referred to?
Yeah,
Light iron detail, the equipment?
yeah, that was for the specialty team. The specialty teams were added to that, and I believe that there was 1 or 2 items that were moved from one account.
Okay,
So another
this
account
this
now.
was per
Yeah.
guidelines?
Yeah, but the major, for that CR, the major increase was line items that were created for the specialty teams.
Okay, all right, thank you. That was actually my only question. Okay, if no other questions from my colleagues, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Glazier.
Thank you, Chairman. Just really 2 quick comments. Some of the changes we've seen in accounts is like you asked, more items being moved into account 42. Fire department has a tremendous amount of equipment that needs to be serviced and maintained in an appropriate manner so that it works for the guys on the front line and it's safe. In the past, some of those services were in other accounts, and sometimes even if they were in account 42, some of the charges for parts and things were charged to other accounts. Now, all that is in 42, and it should make it much clearer for all of us to see what it takes to maintain the equipment we have for our firefighters. And number 2 is, having had a back and forth with Chief, and having, gone through invoices year to date, invoices last year, that there are expenses to maintain what we've got, whether it be hard equipment or soft equipment like our turnout gear, is well within reason, and it's what they need to support the program.
Thank you, sir, I appreciate that comment. Thank you very much.
Is that it, Mr. Glazier?
That's it.
Thank you. One comment I want to make too, I want to commend you and all your officers. And also, as I've been very much involved with the food instability and feeding students and children, I thank you for your cooperation. Jeremy Warmkessel has been agreed to, and with your permission, as a member of the task force that we've set up. And we're hoping to include one of your fire stations for an after-school program.
Absolutely.
And I've been in touch, so that's something else. But I just want to commend you for, you're always there to help, and the cooperation from your men is outstanding.
Thank you.
And I've been able to participate, as Courtney has, and some of my other colleagues, when you hold these training sessions over at Maxell. In fact, I think that was you, Courtney, in the suit, wasn't it?
It was, and it was quite an interesting experience on a hot day, so.
But no, they're exceptional. It gives me, I mean, I came from the other side, obviously, of the police department for 40 years, but fighting fires is a different animal. And and I appreciate all the help that you guys have given.
As a lot of people say, we're the only ones that are willing to run in as everybody's running out.
Running out, yes, that's correct. And we'll guard the outside of it for you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to EMT right now. Paramedics. EMS.
All right, I'm gonna talk fast because I've been tie entirely too long tonight. And I didn't print anything out because Mr. Glazier sent me an email that my printing might be excessive, so. It's all on the screen.
The black and white is only a half
The
a
black-
cent.
You're right, we're gonna switch them all to black and white.
Thank you for some much needed comedy, Mr. Gratz.
Actually, taking pictures of you in the tie.
I just had that on hold.
Is this thing on? All right, let's move right along. So let's talk about the cost of providing EMS in 2019, because EMS has a unique economic component to it because, well, we generate revenue. We have a mechanism for that. So some quick math, the cost per capita, so our expense budget divided by the number of residents, about $38.41. So users, through our EMS billing, pay 88% of that. So the taxpayers subsidize $564,000, $4.70 per year per resident. Gets you EMS. Let that sink in for a little bit. So that fancy book there that someone commissioned some economists to write for the federal government, who are way smarter than I am, say that users cover usage costs, but because insurers don't really care about our readiness, that's where the taxes come in. So you have someone able to respond. So I can't bill you for being ready, but I'm sure you want us to be ready and able to respond to your emergency in an expeditious amount of time. So one of the things we always look to do is maximize efficiency. I've heard that word thrown around a couple times in the 8 hours we've been here tonight. So EMS calls are at a record pace for 2018. We are slated to go over 16,000 calls for the first time ever in our history. So what we're worried about is when you start looking at cost cutting as a solution all the time to eliminate or to reduce your net cost, is something's got to give there. That money's got to come from somewhere. So at what point do we eliminate resources that are needed to meet that increased demand? So one of the ways that we've tried to tackle that is how do we maximize our revenue collection efforts and not degrade the service? Because ultimately, it has the same result. It reduces our net cost. So that's one of the things we tackled. So if you look at that busy chart over there on the right, the blue line or the purple line that's above all the rest of them there, that's our revenue for this year by month. So clearly, we're doing something right there. Oh, and that fancy trend line there with the forecast on the line chart on the left, there's 2014 through 2018 call volume from January 1st to 11/23 of each year. We can see which way that trend line's going, and it's not down. So one of the other ways we can address this is we make some effective policy changes. So in 2016, many of you were present on council. What we did was you got the 2 strikes, and on the 3rd, you were paying if you were using the ambulance for calls that don't meet medical necessity. So there was some concern at the time that we were going to lose some calls that probably should have came to EMS, and I don't think we're really seeing that. There's 2 things that were desired outcomes from this policy. One is we're going to see more revenue, which we're not necessarily seeing because of this, but 2, we're actually seeing utilizers that should be utilizing the ambulance. So those folks who are low acuity or minor acuity that can go to urgent care or can get to the ER safely by another means, well, they're doing that, 73% reduction. So if we think about what I just told you about the call volume for this year, think about what it would be without that 73%. That's a pretty effective policy change. So fiscal prudence, so as Mr. Garidi will be happy about, so we're still cutting. So let's take out the 64,000 you all were gracious enough to give me last year for the automated CPR devices that now ride on all 4 frontline ambulances and get used heavily. So we take that out because that's kind of an outlier. All our non-personnel expenses last year, there's your aggregate, 291,000. So in 2019, we look at the same number, and we'll take out the litter project, which I'm going to address in great detail in the next couple slides. So that gives us 273. So we take those two outliers out because those are two projects. So what are we doing with our yearly operating costs? Well, that's down 6.2%. So doing more with less, I'd say that meets the bill. And let's talk about that $362,000 project. Well, I didn't have a way for you to pay for it, and it's not tax subsidy. So Medicaid increased by House Bill 699, which Representative Causer was gracious enough to get through the House, and the governor signed the law, gives us our first increase since 2004 for Medicaid from the states. In the budget for 2019, it is law. It was previously about 200% below Medicare rates. So your ALS rate, advanced life support, $200 up to $300, your basic life support, you get a $60 raise there. So what we did was, I went back to 2017, because we have a full year of data to capture, and we looked at the breakdown of the different codings for charges and how many calls we did that went to Medicaid payers. So if we look at that, 4,015, we do the math, obviously my chart speaks for itself, $374,000. Well, I just told you we're busier than 2017. 2019 is probably gonna be busier than 2018. So I think that's a conservative estimate, and it gives us some margin of error. Which again, covers your 374. So let's look at the litter upgrade. So Mr. Hendricks asked me earlier, that's an expensive bed. So what you don't get out of a line item in the detail book, and it's up there, the page numbers are up there on all my stuff for you, and the account number. What you don't get out of a line item is enough detail to explain to you what they actually are. I put it into litter upgrade, that's what it is, but to you, that's a really expensive bed. So the NFPA, those pesky guys have their hands in everything, we just heard about them at length. They now have some control over ambulances. So we get stretcher mounting systems that are no longer compliant in new vehicles. So what we have now, we can't order in new vehicles. Hence the $225,000 ambulance that's coming January delivery date has this system in it. So the cost to us to upfit the other 7 vehicles, signed, sealed, delivered, out the door, in our trucks, and a 5-year warranty, $362,000 today. So if we take that out over 8 years, which will be to turn over the other 7 vehicles in the fleet, I use 3%, the manufacturer tells me 4% is probably a safe estimate, but let's err on the low side. $389,000 that's gonna cost us over the life. So that's $26,000 in savings right there today by doing today, because we know what the price is in 2019. And much like our call volume not going down, neither are prices. And one of the nice things about this is once we own it, it comes out of the ambulance into the new one. One-time purchase, once we own 8 of them, as long as we still only have 8 ambulances in our fleet, it moves along and the next truck is that much cheaper. So what is the system? Well, that gives you a pretty good idea of what you're buying. So yeah, it's a bed, but that gentleman right there, that's being suspended by the load system. So right now our litters are some of them are over 20 years old. Some of them predate, I'm here 18 and a half years, they predate me. We've had 7 incidents or mechanical failures since June. We had 1 paramedic who had a minor back tweak but didn't miss any time. We fortunately have not injured any patients. We did have one at a community event at Stevens Park where we couldn't get the litter to go in the load, so we couldn't load it in the back of the ambulance. So we stood in the street with the patient on the litter and waited for another ambulance to show up. That's with biannual maintenance on these things. I mean, 20 years, they've had a good life. So the new system's powered. So what you see there with that litter is that's the powered load system holding the litter. And actually where that gentleman's pushing with his right hand, it brings the wheels up and down. So we aren't lifting that 700 pounds. The litter system is doing that. So Mr. Nelson was gracious enough to tell me that back injuries cost an average of $10,665 over his data from the last 5 years. So if we're not lifting, that's probably less hurt backs. And again, this goes up to 700 pounds, and the wings, the railings on the side of the litter that some of you are familiar with, actually are like wings that come out and they'll handle some of our girthier folks who don't fit on the lift now. So the litter itself is more comfortable, it's a much nicer ride. Ms. Alpha.
Oh, yeah.
Much,
I hope so.
I promise.
Last one's terrible.
So, and one of the benefits to doing this now is, like I told you, the truck coming in January has this. It's coming. So now I've got a hodgepodge of equipment. That's a lot of room for error. And which one of those 20-year-old litters do we keep? Which one's not gonna fail? Oh, I wouldn't put any of them out if I knew they were gonna fail. So the stuff, they're all old. So if we do this now, we upfit the entire fleet, you get all the benefits of this system at the price we know, and it's consistency. We bring somebody in, they train all the firefighters, they train all of us, they train police officers. The manufacturer rep lives in Lower Macungie. He'll be more than happy to come out and do as many trainings as we want. And you're getting a 5-year warranty at that price. So we'll talk about what that means to our budget in the next slide. But again, that's bumper to bumper. So anything breaks on them in that 5 years, they'll come out. So let's go through count by count quick, try to answer most of your questions before you get to ask them. So permanent wages, there was a drop which caught my attention, but we had a lot of years of no turnover, and last year we played catch up. We had some folks move on to other opportunities. Some have been here 20 years because we have to work till 55. It's not technically retired, but that's pretty close. I'll call that retired. So some of the newer folks came in at the bottom pay scales, and that resulted in a little bit of a change in the O2 account. O6 is premium pay. The one difference there is, much like Chief Ware's budget, where the mysterious money disappeared last year, we had a little bit of mysterious money, not 100,000, but just poof, gone. I don't know where that came from, didn't come from my analytics. And we actually line itemed in for the standby special event costs. So we do a lot of special events throughout the year, and we go out and the organizers, with few exceptions, reimburse those costs at $100 an hour as per the codified ordinance. So that money comes in as revenue. Well, we're paying it out of the 6 account, but it's coming in and getting credited as revenue. So we line item that in for this year. So there's a small increase, but again, it's a more of a realistic number than, I put any number you want in there, but I'm trying to be realistic as to what we're gonna expense, because we spend less, we put less ambulances on the street, which longer response times, and, well, less revenue if we wanna make it about that. So our 26 account, as we alluded to, we're gonna print in black and white, but right now it's not the fault of black and white, so I didn't print anything. Our 42 account, page 87 in the detail book, litter, stair chair maintenance. So now, because we have a bumper to bumper warranty on the new litters, that is just stair chairs, which is made by the same manufacturer, so guess what, they'll service all of them. And that's $4,200 annually, less. So you'll see that that's reflected in the line item detail in the 42 account. So let's talk 5 years of that. Well, we figured that out, $21,000. So there's another savings. Moving right along, our 46 account, you're gonna see a little bit of an increase in TriZetto, which is the billing clearinghouse. So the more insurance we can verify for patients, the more claims, like Medicaid claims, have to go through the clearinghouse, Medicare goes through the clearinghouse, or the insurers. So the more we're sending there, yeah, it costs more, but I think our revenue is exponentially higher because of that, because we're doing our diligence in verifying insurance. 56 account, the big change for uniforms is the entry armor for the tactical paramedics is up, 5-year life. Those of you who are on former officers know the ERT guys wear the heavy armor, well, so do the medics. The one article there that I pulled up that's all over the media right now, the unfortunate events, the tragic events that happened in Pittsburgh, really highlighted the lives saved by having tactical paramedics who can make that entry. We have that same thing here with our physician, our medical director, and the 3 of our paramedics trained to that level that will make entry. In order to make entry, they need body armor. I'm not sending anything without it, and that's why that price is in there. But that's an every 5-year expense. Above and beyond the soft body armor we provide to the paramedics that wear the same soft body armor like APD does. While we're talking about specialized paramedics, just segue in, and the chief talked at great length about the special teams for the fire department. We have paramedics that support the bomb squad wherever they go, paramedics who are trained in some of the technical rescue disciplines, and some of the paramedics who are hazmat guys like myself who really enjoy that stuff. So we're supporting them in everything they do because of that continuity of operations and that cohesive relationship. So I think that's important to highlight all the hard work our folks put in above and beyond just taking you to the hospital and providing excellent medical care. 66 account is chemicals, we buy oxygen. So the trend is, they figured out, we talked about a little bit, I think earlier this year, sometimes less is more with oxygen. Flooding everybody with high flow oxygen is kind of out of vogue. So we've reduced our costs, plus the air gas provides us some great pricing. The hydrostatic testing went to another vendor, and Mr. Glazier and I have had a email conversation back and forth. That may move accounts, but we'll address that at another point here. 72 account, aside from the litter project, which I think we discussed at great length, there's some money in there that was added for drive cam replacement. The subrogation savings, we had someone on Public Road in Trout Creek cross the double yellow line, hit the ambulance head on, $13,000 worth of damage. I have a very nice smiling picture of the driver crossing over the double yellow line, smacking the ambulance. And he fled the scene and injured two parties with him. So honestly, those things are worth their weight in gold when it comes to that. So the beauty of a line item budget for you all is it gives you, it's all input focused. So it gives you a lot of control over where that money's being spent. For us as department heads, bureau managers, obviously we have to look at outputs as well, because I mean, you're all paying me to make sure that our guys are answering calls expeditiously, reliably, and providing great care. So how can we take those inputs, that money and those line items, and make them go as far as possible? Do more with less. So some of the goals for 2019, we're going to strive to handle the increasing call volume, because it's always going up, expeditiously and professionally. So in 2018, we're averaging 6.68 minutes dispatched to scene. We're going to evaluate our unit hour utilization. That's what UHU is for changes. So what that essentially is how much the units are being utilized. So there's a whole formula for that, which I won't bore you with. But right now we're at 0.59. For 911 services, the literature says anywhere between 0.30 and 0.50. 0.50 is essentially saying you're using 50% of the time. Because we can't reliably predict emergency calls, you need to have that readiness factor built in. So we're already over that. We're going to increase our public outreach and education. We've done a lot with our hands-only CPR program, giving out kits. We're going to work with Ms. Moda to have some bilingual classes in CPR, and our new AED trainer is bilingual as well, which I don't even think I highlighted. The new AEDs that are in the public access locations in the city buildings, says Espanol on the screen, push a button, it gives you prompts in Spanish. So one of the reasons we went with that device was for our makeup here in the city. So but we're definitely going to focus on that. We want to improve our patient provider safety with the litter systems. I think we've talked about the problems there and the benefits of that. And we're going to continue to partner with our health systems to develop and expand some of the patient-centered initiatives. So our folks from St. Luke's are here tonight to support us, and they have a direct-to-CAT scan program for stroke patients. So we'll actually call in, say they meet this criteria, we will not pass go in the ER, we'll go direct to the CAT scan. We have some fantastic door to TPA, which is a treatment for a clot in your brain, times because of that. Pre-hospital MI, which is a heart attack is an MI, we're calling those in the field with the 12-lead EKG technologies and transmitting those to the hospitals. Same kind of thing. We're in the door into the cath lab. We just had a door balloon time in like 12 minutes, and we had Odyssey Crest together last week that we call pre-hospital. And you know, the performance metrics that are out there, obviously Mission Lifeline Gold Plus, we're on like year 3 or 4 now. So they keep changing the metrics a little bit. So we're going to keep trying to raise our game up and maintain that. CARES, as some of you saw. So what we do is we report to that cardiac arrest registry to enhance survival. So we report all our data there, and they give us back return of spontaneous circulation data. It shows us how well we're doing with bystander CPR, all those metrics that we can kind of gauge where we're at statewide, nationally, regionally, and it gives us something to target areas for improvement. So, take home point I'll kind of leave you with from what we talked about. So you can buy some really, really cool trinkets on Amazon. I mean, who does not want this to grow there? So for $10, or for less than $10 a year, you have the peace of mind knowing that you're going to get an ambulance with 2 paramedics pretty darn quick. So I'd say that's probably, Mr. Gross is tough. I mean, that's, I don't know. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you guys, discussion, questions, because I think everybody, that was pretty good.
Is that your yoga mat on that?
Yes. It makes a great pillow under my desk.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
One question I have, and you would probably know this, a lot of your call volume increasing based on our aging population?
I think that's always a factor. Some of it's,
Keep track of those?
I could, I'm not gonna pull any numbers.
If you could sometime.
Absolutely, I'll
No
pull
rush with that.
No,
Just
I'll
curious.
absolutely do that. One of the things I think you're seeing is all this development, it's great for the city, but what's it doing? It's bringing
There's a
people
lot
there.
more patients for you.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the business we're bringing in downtown. What were we 10 years ago, the amount of people working on Hamilton Street versus what we are now?
Yeah.
So that's what you're seeing. It's the same thing the police department's seeing, it's the same thing the fire department's seeing. Development's great, but unfortunately, there's a workload that comes along with that, so.
Absolutely. I was gonna go first, but my major question you answered already. When I looked at those cots and saw they were $51,000 each, I thought, what are they made out of, gold?
Well, they are golden color, which I don't think is by accident. Buy stock in Stryker.
And I called in earlier to Mike, I said, Mike, what's up with this number, is this correct? And he said, you want me to call over if I said no? I said, I want him to answer that in the public, because they're gonna wanna know what too. Cost $51,000.
I was
Thank you.
actually contemplating bringing one in here, because McConkey Ambulance has them, and I was gonna have them bring one in here, and I thought, I ain't gonna go to that show. But
Thanks.
anytime you wanna see it.
Okay. Okay, I'll go to my left this time, starting my left. Mr. Robinson?
Since I only have one question for Mr. Gratz, I'm happy to go first. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you, Eric, for an excellent presentation, well put together budget, and you answered most of our questions ahead of time, so I think that was pretty smart. I also just have to say from a personal note, I've talked to you a few times about doing a ride-along, but I wasn't planning for that to be as patient as it was on the 6th. So the service was excellent, and I sort of got to see a little bit firsthand of just how well everything works. You know, I have the unique experience of having worked with EMS 10 years ago for about 2 years as an office clerk, but seeing it firsthand as a patient, it's a very different perspective. And I just want to say thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad to see you up and doing well. And what did you think of the litter? No.
No, to be honest, I actually, as much as I could with the vertigo, I was trying to pay attention to that because I knew you were bringing this up. And I can tell you that it's definitely something where you can see the need for it. So, because when you're laying in that litter, you can feel the lift that the medics have to put into it. So there's really something to what you're presenting, and I think coming up with this and a revenue stream for it is excellent work.
Well, and I think, you look at it from the standpoint of 20 years ago, I mean, a Chevy Lumina was kind of a cool car.
Yes.
Not today. So, I don't think that was cool 20 years ago. I don't know if that was ever cool.
So my only question for you is going to be similar to a question that I asked Chief Weir. If you could just go over the personnel budget for your administrative side on both EMS and on billing, and sort of give us an idea as to what it is that the staff does, and specifically what you do, since you're the staff.
Well, yeah, lucky for you at this hour, that's a short story. So, as you alluded to, you worked in and I'm talking fast. So you worked in that clerk 3 position, which some people may not know. So how much of your time was monopolized by billing back then? Probably most of it?
I would say easily 90% of my time was monopolized. Well, I would say certain people in the building department wanted it to be 100% of my time, but it was pushed back that at least 10 to 15% was spent on clerical work, which was not small even 10 years ago.
So what do you think, 10 years ago, our volume probably 4,000, 5,000 calls less than it is now?
Oh,
So
easily,
with the same
yes.
amount of billing staff, we're doing 5,000 more. So 100% of that clerk's time is spent in billing.
Yep.
Our billing specialist, Melody, who we hired this year, she's doing fantastic, quick learner. And our EMS billing supervisor, Kristen Vargo, who was our specialist, she moved up with retirement, and she's done a fantastic job of kind of look at where can we improve things. Not that we were doing anything wrong before, but technology, I'm a big technology guy, I'm a big numbers guy, obviously, so we looked at that improvement. So she autonomously runs that, she comes to me, we have, daily discussions, but she manages that autonomously. I have 4 shift supervisors, 1 works at a time, similar to the police lieutenants and the fire battalion chiefs, they're responsible for a platoon. They're in an operational role. And I make the PowerPoint, I do the budget, I do payroll, I pay invoices. Which Mr. Glazier knows intimately because I swear there's a shoe voucher conspiracy. I sent him that email yesterday. So, yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. But I'll be perfectly honest with you. At this point, we're gonna need to address the call volume issue and unit hour utilization before we address how many emails I send to Mr. Glazier on Thanksgiving, because that's when I have free time. I'll keep doing that if it means that we get more people on the street and more equipment to help these guys do their job. Because that's what matters to folks paying the taxes. So.
Absolutely, and I just think it's worth noting that there have been severe cuts in the administrative side of EMS over the last 10 years. And I think that it's a perfect example of, as you said, doing more with less. But we're getting to the point where, because of increases in call volume and expectations, we might need to address that in the coming years.
I think what we did, it was more redistribution. What we did was we redistributed personnel to get those 4 shift supervisors. There really wasn't a whole lot of addition until you folks put back to 25 and 26, which we had 27 before the redistribution. We lost an administrative position, but we gained those 4 operational positions, which we desperately need, because someone calls me at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're not getting a real good answer for the first 5 minutes or so. So that's
more like 10.
2 o'clock in the morning is even worse, but we'll leave it at that. But, those are the things that we needed to address at the time.
Right.
And like I said, I think we need to address the call volume first, and if it means that the person in this job wears a lot of hats, well, I got a big head, fortunately, so we're good there.
I appreciate the work that you've done on this. I appreciate the work that you and your staff do every day. And I think that it's one of the best things that we have to offer our citizens, and sort of the best selling point when it comes to services provided, because it's very rare anymore for communities to have ambulances that are staffed 24 hours a day with 2 fully trained paramedics. And I think that's a great thing, and something that I can say for myself, I don't think this city should ever change. So I appreciate your time, Mr. Gratz. Thank you, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I only have one question then, and this is a question I'll ask of my colleagues, Mr. McLean and Mr. Zukel and myself. What took so long? 40 years earlier, we're doing great for those self-lifting.
So Jeff Baker, who many of you know, retired 2 years ago. He told me he actually shrunk 2 inches because of the compression in his spine.
I can believe
So,
it.
I apparently shrunk too, but I think it's just.
Thank you. Mr. Zuko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No questions, your presentation was awesome. I've said this many times before in public, the reason our homicide rate is probably as low as it is because of the service that our paramedics provide and their techniques that they perform. I did get to use one of those litters this summer by St. Luke's, and they're awesome. I mean, it's basically a remote control, and it does extend in the air. So as far as back problems, can't imagine you'll see any after that.
And it's much smoother for the patients.
It is.
Obviously, you get that perspective. It's automated. It's not a bunch of guys ramming a litter in the back of the ambulance. So that's all.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Zuko. Ms. Moda?
I'm just excited that we're gonna have more CPR for the community, and I'm looking forward to continue to work, with you guys.
Our collaborative efforts with our community partners, and that's a big part of what we're trying to do is get out there. And I think that was lacking for a number of years, just purely because, as Mr. Robinson alluded to, we're bare bones. So trying to do more, but I've got guys who are passionate about it and they want to do it, so let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. McLean?
Yes, several members of council have been guests at your ambulances. I'll wait till the next generation. But one question I do have for you, when you said you felt like you've been here for 8 hours tonight, what exactly were you referring to? You don't have to answer. Go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Abbott?
I just have a few, just to thank you, because a lot like Mr. Robinson, I went on a ride along that I didn't anticipate. And while I was in there, I actually complained, I said, God, my back's gonna go out. That wasn't the scary thing, but what was scary is when they told me how, at one point, that litter broke away and the EMS guy had to actually hold it with his feet so that the, that was scary. I mean, the bumpy ride was one thing, but when you think about the fact that that thing can be dislodged, and those things are just so old, that, yeah, I like this one.
Well, I think this is a great opportunity because the Medicaid increase provides us the ability to do it without a burden to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
So, let's let the users pay for something that's gonna benefit the users.
What's the chairlift now? I got lost for.
The stair chair?
Stair chair, yes.
So stair chairs we've had forever. What it is it's actually a collapsible chair. The new ones, and I'll say new because they're probably 12 years old versus the ones we had when I started, they actually have tracks on the back, like a refrigerator dolly. So if you're on the third floor and you're not able to walk, we put you in a chair, strap you in, put you on the tracks, and down you go.
All right.
And now you go out to the nice powdered litter, we'll push a button, we put you up. And a lot of improvements. Those stair chairs were, that was the Cadillac upgrade in 2005.
And I see we save a lot of money if we purchase these.
So the cots we have are like impossible to get parts for because well, no one's using them anymore. Driving a Chevy Lumina, like I said. So, they are expensive when you get, and you can't get that's a third-party vendor that comes out that you're contracting with to service those. Where these cots, Stryker, the manufacturer, they're gonna come out and do that. And like I said, their sales guy, who I know, is in Lower Macungie. If I call him on a holiday and say, hey, I broke a litter, I need the one out of your van that you drive around in, he'll bring it out to us because we're hopefully gonna be a very good customer here shortly. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Safra. Mr. Green?
I'm also afraid of asking him a question anymore. Great job, excellent presentation. And I'm super happy. How did the two people that we put about 2 years doing?
Oh, excellent. So unfortunately this year, just because of some natural turnover and the process, even with the mayor expeditiously signing things, it's government, so it's slow. Up until October, we were full staff for exactly 1 day. I'm happy to say since October, we've been full staff. But now I have someone who injured herself running a marathon, so she's out on sick time. There's always something, but having those extra 2 people in the mix reduces some of that overtime burden, especially the unwanted overtime to keep these ambulances in service. So that has been a tremendous improvement.
Great. I've never used, and I don't want to use any.
Just call and I'll let you ride along.
I probably do that on a weekend.
Anytime you want.
Is a weekend good for us?
Yeah, anytime you want.
Absolutely. Just a few questions here. And I don't know if it is my math or if I'm not seeing it right. I'm looking at 42, account 42, page A7 in the detail book.
Fire away.
And when I add the numbers here, it gives me 36,900. Okay, but then there's like extra 53. I'm confused. I'm not sure what 53.
I think that 53 carries over from the 46 account. Below it, is that what you're talking about? That
Yeah, 53, 300.
Yeah, that's the 46 account running over there, I think.
Okay,
It kind of gives it's confusing because
it is confusing.
It's on 2 pages. I blame Eden. Sorry. I blame Eden for everything, and usually I'm right.
So the total is what, the 36,900 or 53,300?
No, so the total for the 42 account is 36,900. The total for the 46 account is 53,300.
Okay, all right, okay. So it just, so it should be like 16,400.
And if you look at the top of the 42, it shows you across the top what the budget line items are, and then the line item total is at the bottom. So it's doing the same thing for the 46. It's showing you 2018 budget, 2018 adjusted, 2018 AD, and then our 2019 proposed. And then you flip to page 88 on the top, and it shows you the line item total aggregate.
Oh.
So those numbers match up.
Oh, okay.
I say it's just weird how.
So that one is, it should total up to, what, 16,400, which is the difference between the 53,300 and 39,900. I mean, 36,900.
We went from 60,000 down to 36,000.
Okay, good. On this lifter, that chair, that bed that you're talking about, the litter, I'm not sure which one is the litter, which one is the chair, I'm not familiar.
The
with
chair we own, there is one in the budget here, line item 3 on the 72 account, page 89 in the detail book. That is because those chairs are from like 2005, and we really don't have a spare. So when one breaks, we gotta go drop one off another ambulance. So the stair chairs we have, that would just be another one and we would put some of the older ones in spare status. And then the replacement cots for the 7 ambulances, cots, litters, I'm sorry, I use all those terms interchangeably. That's the number 6 line item, and that is the load system, the bed, and the install charge for the gentleman to come and bolt that thing to our floor.
Okay. What's the lifespan of that bed?
I would say
So
probably-
you have a 5-year, I guess,
Warmer to bumper warranty.
So what happens after if it breaks?
We're gonna have to buy, we'll have to buy a service plan at that point.
Okay.
So, much like our defibrillator monitors, which is a big portion of our 42 account, we'd have to contract with them. But obviously, it's a better rate right now if we buy 5 years up front, and then we don't have to worry about it until 5 years from now.
So that means that next year's budget is gonna be a lot smaller for you?
Plus, I have 7 letters in it.
Good, good. All right, I think that was it.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Kirby.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Glazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is true that Mr. Gratz did email me on Thanksgiving. And the interesting is that he was answering questions before I even got to ask them. But also, you know,
I'm watching previous hearings on that.
perhaps, you know, once again, I went over, the EMS expenses, and, Ms. Gratz and I had a back and forth, and I really find that the amount that he's budgeted is very reasonable, and, it's very reasonable. Thank you, sir.
As evidenced by the lack of questions.
Well, I will say, both my parents are CPAs, my dad's also a certified internal auditor, so I kind of grew up with this, so I enjoy our banter. Probably why I'm answering his questions before, but.
No further questions? Seeing none? Okay, I will now open it up to the public.
Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, members of council. My name is Edward John White, West Highland Street, Allentown. And I would like to thank the administration and members of the administration for their preparation, and the chiefs and department heads for their presentations this evening. It was very enlightening. Came here to another council meeting a month or so ago, and I stated that I had 3 priorities for the city. Number 1 is public safety, number 2 is children and youth, and number 3 is blight. Tonight it's about public safety. So I posted on Facebook a little while ago, it wasn't 8 hours, sir, but I'm here to urge the mayor and city council to commit the resources necessary to keep the people and property in the city safe while maintaining a prudent budget that imposes as low a tax burden as possible on the taxpayers of the city. Public safety matters, balanced budgets matters. I believe everything I said there. I believe that what I've heard here tonight from each of these fine organizations is exactly that. I think they are doing more with less. My comment is, I was very concerned over the last 12 years with the prior administration that there was funny business with the budget. And what I believe that Mr. Hirschman has presented over time and time again before this body is that there were budgeted items and the money was never spent on the budgeted items. I urge you to make sure that if we budget for appropriate personnel levels of our police, fire, and EMS, that we spend the money that you budgeted to provide the services that the city residents deserve. And I urge you and implore you to do that and to find a way. They are doing more with less, but it's our safety, as Councilman Robinson knows, directly from the services that were provided. We cannot skimp on these matters for our citizens, our taxpayers. And the question that I ask, and it's mostly directed to the chief of police, and that is, other than the council not budgeting the money that you've asked for, what obstacles are there to providing the full complement of personnel needed to have an adequately, professionally staffed and trained police department? And I would ask the same question of the department heads for the other 2, but I'm most concerned with police. What do we need to do, and what obstacles are there to providing that adequate level of staffing that will give us those officers that will be grant funded? And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Can I just say something about that?
Sure.
That thing. And, you know, throughout the years, we always budgeted more police officers than they've been able to hire and put on the force per year. I'll give you an example. I think last year we budgeted for, I think it was, 222 police officers, I think we budgeted for, and 223. And we got, what, about 213 was, I think was the max we got, might have been 216, but it's just difficult sometimes to get the full account for what we budget. So,
I think to answer for the chief, so he doesn't have to yell, but a lot of it is the background process. It's very time consuming. They just gave the test, they have a list of applicants, now they have to go through into those the backgrounds. You wash a lot of applicants out during the background process. It's kind of frustrating to the amount of people that are washed out during that process, but we want the best, so it's gotta be done.
It seems promising with the amount of people that took the test, that hopefully this time around, we'll be more successful in filling those positions. Okay, anybody else from the public? Yes, ma'am. Would step up, just give your name to the clerk, please.
Cheryl Hockney. I've owned and lived in my house on Walnut Street near the library for 31 years. And I'm very active in the Library Area Neighborhood Association. I'm a member of West Park Civic Association's Board of Directors. And my first comments and questions are directed toward police, and then I have two for the fire. I'd like to say that I'm happy that the Part 1 crimes have diminished. I've noticed that in my neighborhood in particular, both my neighborhoods.
Excuse me, you need to direct your stuff to the city council.
West
I'll
Park.
get you the answers.
Thank you for the protocol. What I'd like to do is ask a couple of questions of you about the police and make a couple of comments. What I've noticed in my neighborhoods, both West Park and the Library Area Neighborhood Association, is that while the Part 1 crimes are down, we seem to have a lot of nuisance calls. My neighborhood is mixed residential business with a lot of single property families that from a previous regime several decades ago were chopped up into rental units. So we have a lot of transient population. And I've noticed, again, 31 years in the same location, I've noticed that we've got a lot of nuisance calls. Now, I understand that we certainly don't want our police department coming and responding to nuisance calls when there are lives at stake. We get that. One of the things I've heard at both neighborhood association meetings from our West End police captain is that one of the goals of the police department in the coming budget was to increase the number of officers that would be authorized to do sweep tickets, which would help alleviate the quality, would help address the quality of life diminishing because of all these nuisance calls. So I want to know, is that part of the budget? Because I didn't hear that specifically brought out. I'm guessing it's probably not a line item.
I would say it's part of the city's policy.
Yeah.
And that is something we've all talked about, that we want to be able to deliver to the people, to attack a lot of these quality of life issues. And I can tell you, from my perspective on the police department, I would say the same. From the current chief and staff, quality of life issues are one of the major concerns that we get.
To be specific, are we gonna have more sweep officers in 2019? That's my specific question.
We won't know that until the budget is completed.
Okay, the same, sure.
Have you tried with the DCR, the sergeant conduct?
Yes, we, again, 31 years in a neighborhood, we have utilized all of the channels available to us. What I'm asking specifically about sweep officers is because it has been brought to our neighborhood association's attention by our West End police captain. First it was now Assistant Chief Angelo and now Captain Roca. So it seems that there's a definite need for it. I just wanted to see if it was going to be part of the budget discussion, specifically sweep officers.
I think that would be a matter of training the officers to deal with, not actually hiring specific officers.
My understanding, unless I heard incorrectly at several meetings, was that it would be to increase the number of officers.
Well, they have a grant, and as you may have heard earlier, when the chief said, when they get to 121, they can take advantage of that grant for 6 officers, so that would be increased.
So then my next comment and question piggybacks on the sweep officers, which would be the number of officers on bicycles. We've seen in our neighborhood that when we have the officers closer to the citizens, meaning out of cars and on bicycles or on foot, that it makes a huge difference. It makes a big difference in the diminishing of the nuisance violations, as well as it establishes really positive relationships with the citizens and our officers, particularly the youth in our neighborhoods. So again, as you're looking at the budgets for the police department, I'd like to ask that we look at allocating some resources, whether it's additional people or whether it's additional hours to being able to initiate sweep and also with bicycle officers.
Thank you, and I think your captain is here, chief
Yes.
is here, they hear you loud and clear,
Okay.
and I'm sure they're gonna take that into consideration. And I would say, rest assured, they will address those issues.
My next comment and question is for our fire department. One of the things I noticed, again, we have a lot of multi-units. We have, I live in an N-unit townhouse. I start the row that goes all the way down from Jefferson almost to 13th on Walnut. And I've noticed that people are grilling on covered porches. So as part of your education outreach, could we please address that in the summer months? It's crazy, but people offer covered patios, not just balconies. I mean, front porches, rear covered patios. That's a huge fire hazard. If we could have that outreach in both English and Spanish, I think that would be a valuable, it would put me more at ease in my neighborhood. I don't like always having to be the bad guy to rat people out. I think education could go a long way to that, reducing that hazard. And one comment about our scuba team. I'm a master PADI certified diver with certified in rescue as well as in night diving, and I'm certified for night shocks. To be able to have a dive rescue team as part of our overall public safety team is really admirable. It's really noteworthy, and I'm very proud that our city has that to offer both to our citizens and to our outlying municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Good evening.
Chanel,
How are
your
you?
name and
Milagro Canales, the president of Old Fairgrounds in Center City. I'm also, the community liaison for Jordan Heights. First, I want to say that I'm very proud to be here today because I love my police department. Especially my captain.
how about EMS?
Oh, EMS, yeah, I know I had to use them, sorry. So, I know that I'm an ambulance, but, oh, whatever. So, I'm here tonight because two reasons. Recently, we had a grant that was, it was called The Incredible Messenger through Promise Neighborhood, and it was going to target our specific areas. In light of a recent shooting that happened in the 400 block of Allen, as you're aware, I live in 500 block of Allen, now I live in block of 2, oh, I'm sorry. But we haven't been able to implement that grant, and I wanted to know if the city would give me a reason, if they want to later, on why we haven't gotten started with that. You want to know the Incredible Messengers, I can tell you. Second, my time should be more. I'm a nonprofit. It should be 5 minutes, but okay. Second, I also want to say that the police department plays a big role in Center City when it comes to our youth, especially in the Jordan Heights area, and everything that Tony and Glenn and everybody has done in the police department to incorporate a welcoming environment for our youth has been excellent. And I was the original person pushing behind the Youth Academy along with Ernie and Tia. And so to see how it's grown and everything in it, I think that we need to allocate a little bit more money in there. Stanko, I miss him. I don't get to see him as much. Chief, make that happen. And also, I just don't want you to cut any of their funding. I haven't been on a ride along, I haven't been arrested, that's a good thing. But I think that we need to look at the overall, and I think that they've done an excellent job in how they are allocating their money. And they really haven't asked for a lot, and I'm hoping that we give them everything they're asking for. I think they deserve it, all of them. And that file, the EMS one was really, it was really funny. I think you should get a little raise. A little stop answering your phone. Only when I call, there you go. But I just wanted to say that.
We'll do our best, and we'll get an answer for you on that question
Yeah,
regarding
it
that.
is,
Somebody will call you.
really, what it is gonna already employ people who are already, effective in the community to talk to the local knuckleheads, working alongside with Glenn to kind of deviate from extra activities.
I think they do that every day. Talk to some
Yeah,
local
they do,
knuckleheads.
but the people who will be talking to them will be me, who already know the knucklehead. I just go call Glenn and say, come over and let's deal with them. But it's more in depth, and it's two Promise neighborhood, and just having that two joint collaboration along with the city, the DA, the court system, it's an amazing venture, and I wanna see it kicked off already.
Okay, I'm sure Captain Granis will get back to you on that.
Billy, one last question.
Yes,
Was
sir.
that a city grant or was there,
That
was that through
actually
Promise
came,
Neighborhood?
it's not, come on, help me. He gonna sit there, he helped write it.
Whose grant was it?
Yes.
That was just going off the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, it's,
All right.
it's,
Yes, we do.
It's coming.
yeah, we got the approval on the grant itself, it's just now it's.
All right, Millie's anxious here. She doesn't wanna wait. Yeah, they're getting it going, Millie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir. Step right up.
Somebody else could.
Oh, she's gonna be a little tough to follow, but.
I'm John Smonage on behalf of St. Luke's Hospital, St. Luke University Health Network. Wanted to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak. We love EMS, Eric, we love you. She forgot you. And a big thank you to all our public safety agencies in the room for what you and your staff do daily. I'm here to support and attest to the amazing work that the men and women of the City of Allentown paramedics provide to your citizens and residents, to your citizens, visitors. While we work closely with them on a daily basis, they not only add value to this community, but also to our health network. The men and women of the City of Allentown paramedics have great relationships with our hospital staff and are always willing to be leaders in new initiatives. Initiatives that not only better your community, but also patient outcomes. Specifically to what Eric spoke about. Our Direct to CT program now has a 0 minutes door to CAT scan time. And our door to cath lab, we measure door to balloon times of less than 13 minutes, which exceeds national standards. That means that your City of Allentown paramedics are recognizing signs and symptoms of acute life-threatening emergencies and treating this community faster. Along with these initiatives, they also make themselves better providers and leaders in their profession and give them the skill set to treat a friend, a family member, or any group of this community on their worst day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well said. Yes, sir.
James Whitney, 924 Walnut Street. You wrote that down, so that's cheating. Also, the EMS dude knows how cool he is. I think he gets it. For $4.70 a person, that was ridiculously cool. I think that he, next year, should give the presentations for all three agencies.
I'm off sick that day.
I just wanted to come up and give a little bit more love to our police. Shelby and I last year lived on the 200 block of Church, was it? At the corner of Oak. Was that? The 600 block of Oak Street. Yeah, it was rough. And the cops really, like, our men and women in uniform really changed our life over the course of that year, and we're able to see the transformation take place. And I agree that it has everything to do with police, EMS, and police, but the community policing that they've shown over this year has had a dramatic impact on the violence in that block and throughout our city. It's really hard to think of the words to like tell them how grateful we are, because it's hard to articulate like the bravery that they show every single day, coming out here and standing up for us when we feel like we're alone and we're at our most vulnerable. They're there to protect us and serve us, and I just feel like we as a city need to combat that national anti-cop sentiment that you touched on earlier. And we need to remember that in the future, there might come a day when a cop on the APD has to make one of those judgment calls that make us feel uncomfortable. But we have to think about right now, in that moment, how are we gonna support cops and how are we going to stand by them through that? Yeah, I just wanna tell them that we appreciate them so much. And EMS too, and the fire, these guys rock, so thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind comments.
Thanks, guys, thank you so much. And those 3 cops that are retiring, I get why they're retiring. We just love them. I don't know who they are. I can tell you right now. That we just appreciate them and we're thinking about them as they retire, and we're so grateful to those guys and to all the cops up here who have retired. We just really appreciate you guys, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else from the public? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Sue Carpich. I live on 1513 Turner. I'm Courtney's neighbor. I just want to say thank you to everybody. We're lived here about 4 years. The city has just grown tremendously in the 4 years that we've been here. We've enjoyed it. And I just have to say that I think you see construction everywhere and the place has grown and more people, if we want to grow the city and we want to grow everything else, we have to grow the budgets of these departments as well to serve the citizens, and I hope that you'll give them everything they ask for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, Patrick Palmer, Allen Street. As someone whose family members have used the EMS, even recently, the fire department a few months back, and police, I'm just asking, could we break protocol and just have a round of applause for them? They don't get told enough how much they really mean to the city, how much they really mean to us, and how hard they are working, even with recent events. And we just want to let them know that we do love them.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.